Okay. So while folks are still entering, I just want to, first of all, start off by saying thank you all for your contributions the last time around. I've heard great feedback from the community, just, about the matter of the expertise that's in the room and how it's been really a collaborative process. So I want to extend my thanks to all the work group members here. I am aware that some of our original work group members are not able to join us today, which includes Laura from New York. So we do have some of her comments included in the text. She was able to gratefully provide some of those numbers that we were waiting for the macronutrients in the minimum diet. So we'll definitely pick up there, and then we'll continue on into the medical diet when we are at that point. I believe we're still waiting on Jordan. So what we can, oh, and there's Meredith.
Jordan did let me know that he would have to leave early today, so he may be trickling in a little late as well, but he'll pop in and we'll keep an eye out for him.
Okay. Thank you, Amanda. Great. Okay, well, while we're waiting for the rest of us to join, we can start with some introduction just to give the community a good reminder of who we are, why we're involved in this work group. And I can go ahead and start. My name is Haila Ganthan. I am a senior program associate with the Food and Prison Project at Impact Justice. And really our work includes research as well as programming with various DOCs across the country to improve the state of food and nutrition inside of carceral settings. Okay, and then I'll just pass it on to the next person on my screen, which is Helen.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Helen Wong. I am the public health nutritionist with the Orange County Sheriff and Coroner's Office. I've been a dietitian for over 40 years and over 30 years with the County of Orange. So I've done a lot of food service management in the private sector, and moving over to the county, did a lot of consultation as well as working with the sheriff on the different menus, and then also have done inspections for different counties.
Thanks, Helen. Carrie?
Hello, my name is Carrie. I work for Stanislaus County Probation. I am the supervising custodial cook, so I oversee all the food nutrition services for the juvenile hall and the juvenile commitment facility in Stanislaus County. And I have been doing working here for the county for over 10 years. I'm also a school nutrition specialist through the California School Nutrition Association.
Thanks, Carrie. Johnny?
Good morning, everybody. Johnny Ortega with Riverside County Probation. I've been with the department for about 19 years now, and have a military background in food services as well. I haven't really participated in any other work groups, but I do oversee 3 facilities. We used to have at least 5 within our department. So I'm very familiar with different operations at different sites and different needs. So thank you.
Thank you, Johnny. Marguerite?
Good morning. I am Marguerite Harris. I'm the Chief Deputy and Superintendent of the Juvenile Hall here in San Luis Obispo County. I oversee all 3 of our programs within our Juvenile Services Center. I've been in this position for just 8 years. Overall, though, in working in a juvenile facility, I have over 16 years out of my 27-year career in probation. I also sit on the executive steering committee for the state regulations revisions for Title 15.
Thank you, Marguerite. And Sochi?
Hi, everyone. Apologies that I'm off camera. I'm either catching a cold or it's just allergies, because allergy season's just, yeah, not my season. But I'll temporarily put my camera on so everyone can see me. Hi everyone, Sochi. I am currently Courageous Youth Justice Coordinator, and I've been in that position for 5 years now, going on to 6. I'm also directly system impacted, and I also sit in our county's, Alameda County's Juvenile Justice Delinquency Prevention Commission. So I'm really familiar working with different departments in that facility and what it takes to kind of make sure that everyone's like aware of the changes and policy implementation, and then also work closely with the young folks. And then next. Thank you.
Thank you, Sochi, and thank you for joining, even though you may not be feeling so well today. We appreciate it. Next, I have Meredith.
Hi, good morning. Meredith Desatel. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a directing attorney with the Youth Law Center. I am hoping to be on camera shortly. I just have to start the morning on the phone, but hope to catch up there. And I also sit on the Executive Steering Committee with Marguerite. Thank you.
Thanks, Meredith. And lastly, Jordan.
Good morning. I'm Jordan, chef for Freedom for Youth. I also am on the Lived Experience Executive Division with Freedom for Youth, and we work closely with troubled youth here in the Santa Barbara County. And yeah, just great to be here. Thank you.
Thanks, Jordan. And now I'll pass it off to our BSCC staff to introduce themselves. Shay, would you like to go first?
Good morning. Shay Molnar with BSCC. I'm a field representative. I've been with the agency for about 1.5 years. Prior to that, I was with Kern County Probation. And for 10 of those years, I was a manager in the facilities.
Thanks, Shay. Amanda?
Good morning. My name is Amanda Ferreira. I'm the regulations analyst here at BSCC.
Thanks, Amanda. Ginger?
Morning, everybody. This is Ginger Wolf. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you,
Sorry,
Ginger.
hopefully you can hear me now. Good morning.
Allison?
Good morning, everybody. I'm Allison Ganter, Deputy Director here with the BSCC, and thankful and happy to see everybody here again this morning.
Thanks, Allison. And Howie?
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Howie from BSCC, Staff Service Analyst.
Thanks. Lindsay?
Good morning, everyone. It's Lindsay. I'm the staff serve manager one, working with Lindsay and Allison and Amanda on the regulatory division. Thank you.
Thanks. And lastly, Matthew.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Matt. I am also a staff service analyst for FSO.
Thanks, everyone, for your intros. So just as a reminder, if y'all are just now joining us, for today, our goals are to get through the remaining Article 9 nutrition regulations, where we will revisit 1461, which is the minimum diet. We have some notes that we've included because of Laura, who was asked to bring in some of the DGA, which is the Dietary Guidelines for Americans, some of those numbers into the different subsections. And then we will pick up on 1462, which is the medical diets. And then at this point, Shay, can you go ahead and lead us through some housekeeping tips?
Yes, thank you, Hyla. So when speaking, please be sure your microphone is not muted and speak directly into your microphone. When you're done speaking, please remute yourself when you're not speaking, and we'll be reminding you throughout. Today, lunch is going to be between 12 and 1 o'clock. And then we have a few notes about Zoom. We've changed how we conduct public meetings on Zoom. We want to ensure that meetings are organized, stay on track, and that members of the community have a fair opportunity to comment. People on Zoom will not be able to unmute themselves during the meeting anymore. The chat feature will only be used by BSCC staff to post messages and links throughout the meeting. If anyone has a question or would like to submit written comment, please email regulations@bscc.ca.gov. When public comment begins, commenters will need to use the raise the hand feature or dial *9 if attending by phone to join the public comment queue. When called upon to speak, you'll be asked to unmute your mic. We will have an opportunity for public comment before and at the end of Article 9. Additionally, there will be opportunities for public comment throughout as regulation revision process continues. This will be when the ESC reviews Title 15 regulation revisions, when the ESC finalizes board revisions, when the BSCC board approves final revisions, and during the Office of Administrative Law 45-day public comment period. Amanda, could you put up public comment instructions? Thank you. The purpose of public comment is to seek input on decisions that are being made on nutrition regulations. Please try and keep your comments focused on this work. Members and BSCC staff will not respond to public comments. We will take comments from in-person attendees first, followed by Zoom attendees. At this time, there are no in-person attendees. For Zoom attendees, when the public comments are called, click raise hand and in the Zoom webinar controls. If you are participating by phone, dial *9. BSCC staff member will add you to the queue. When it's your turn to speak, they will call your name and ask you to unmute your microphone. Your comments will be limited to 2 minutes. Please do not repeat someone else's comment. A countdown timer will be displayed as a visual aid to commenters. Please be mindful of the time you have remaining on your screen for your comment. You may always submit your comment in writing to regulations@bscc.ca.gov. Do any of the members have any questions about public comment? Okay, we're going to go ahead and open public comment.
Our first speaker will be Colin Ford.
Hi, good morning. My name is Colin Ford, Director of Policy at Fresh Lifelines for Youth. Thank you to this work group for their productive first meeting. I look forward to listening to your conversations today. First, I'd like to raise an issue about food being prepared off-site. Although it may be more difficult in smaller facilities to prepare food on-site, the reality is that when food is not prepared on-site, it's often delivered from county jails. In San Mateo County, this means youth are served food that is often hours old. Hot dishes are kept in cases to keep them warm, but they don't actually remain warm. Of the 4 Bay Area counties that FLY offers programs in, San Mateo County, for this reason, is the county where we most often hear complaints from youth about the very poor quality of food. So I'd love to see this addressed in regulation. I'd also like to reiterate a comment I made last time the work group met. It's important that regulations are clear, that food and snacks aren't denied as punishment. This includes ensuring that behavior management and reward systems are not actually punishment systems in disguise. This has been described by many youth that we serve at FLY. Finally, I would love to see the BSCC capture the public comments made in the various work groups and in the executive steering committee meetings and begin to include them as part of the briefing materials for these meetings. Youth and community have consistently shown up to these meetings for a year and a half now, despite the fact that they're during the workday and it can be very difficult, especially for young people, to be present. Despite that, they've shown up and made incredible public comments and offered valuable insight. So I think it's important that these insights offered in public comment aren't forgotten as this process continues and that they're uplifted in the briefing materials so that work group members and ESC members throughout this process can refer back to these valuable public comments. Thank you for your time.
Next, we have Rose.
Hello, everyone. This is Rose. I am the youth voice coach at Fly. I wanted to thank you for your introductions, and I'm looking forward to this conversation today. I want to touch on the menu planning part. I realize that you guys might not be getting to it today, but based off the expertise here, I know that what I'm about to say will not be new information. So I appreciate all of you listening and just thank you for your time. I think there's a huge opportunity to not only elevate youth voice, but to have young people actively involved in the food planning process. Half of youth in Fly surveys rated the food a 3 out of 5 stars or below. While that may sound rudimentary, an article titled Food and Juvenile Justice posted by Story Maps on March 6, 2023 highlights what someone eats can affect how they behave. Furthermore, including that food actually becomes neurotransmitters, also referred as the chemical messengers, in which molecules used by their neurosystems transmit messages between neurons and then onto muscles. Moreover, the article explains that a continual supply of these chemicals are necessary for even the most fundamental mental processes, including but not limited to remembering, planning, acting, sensing, imaging, calculating, and dreaming. Food can also support enhancing skills such as problem solving, optimize alertness, and improve moods as well as behavior. The article also includes a testimony on how food has been connected to delinquency through a personal story. To conclude, including young people in the conversation about what will be entering their body can promote positive thinking, independence, and social skills. And I ask that you all consider and examine the harm that can be done if youth are not a part of the discussion and reflect the impact that it has currently on facilities. I thank you for your time, and yeah, I'll conclude. Thank you.
And there are no more public comments at this time on Zoom.
All right, well, thank you for those who are able to provide their public comment. As a reminder, we will also have a time at the end after we go through the regulations to have a second round of public comment. So thank you for the community for showing up. At this time, we'll go ahead and we will revisit 1461 and review some of the comments that Laura included in the text. Amanda, would you be able to share it on the screen? Thank you. All righty. So as I understand it, the red is the track changes that Amanda made at our first work group meeting. And those that you see in blue are the additions made by Laura. Okay. And as a reminder, from what happened in the first work group meeting, us as the work group, we talked thoroughly through 1461 on the minimum diet. And it was agreed that we would mainly be referencing the dietary guidelines for Americans, as well as the DRIs, the dietary reference intakes. And so as a work group, we asked Laura if she could go in and plug in the recommendations based on those two references as appropriate in these different subsections. So let's go ahead and just take a moment to review what's reflected on the screen here. Okay, so up at the top in the first paragraph, it was updated to now reflect the most current version of the dietary guidelines for Americans, which is 2020 to 2025. And then in subsection A, under protein group, based on the DJAs, 2 servings of protein shall be served daily to include, but not be limited to the following. And it says beef, veal, lamb, pork, poultry, fish, cooked dry beans, peas, lentils, etc. And then also included tofu, seeds, and other protein alternatives with the first ingredient of peas, lentils, beans, nuts, or seeds. Helen.
Hi, if I may, I just want to start with 2 comments in this area. One is actually before the protein group. With everything that we discussed at the last meeting, with the increase in the grains and the proteins and the differences in the fruits and vegetables and the calories, I'm a little concerned with that last sentence in the first paragraph, where it says religious diets, when provided, must conform to these nutrition standards. It may be difficult, especially for like the kosher diet as an example, is the first thing that popped into my mind, because a lot of people purchase prepared kosher meals if they do not have a kosher kitchen, and they don't have control over the sodium content of a lot of these kosher meals, and often they're high, nor do they have control over the protein within these meals or the types of fruits and vegetables. So I'm a little bit concerned with the must conform. Is it possible, and depending on how the group feels, to change that to will conform to these nutrition standards when possible? So that's my first comment. The second comment pertains to the protein group. We've got 2 servings of proteins, and then 1 serving equals 14 grams or more of protein. And then in parentheses, as a total of 52 grams per day for ages 14 to 18 and 56 grams for ages 19 and older. It's a little confusing, I think, to the reader, because on the one hand, you're looking at the 14 grams for the protein, 2 servings, so that's 28 grams. But then you're looking at 52 grams and 56 grams. And I think there are 2 categories of protein. The 14 grams of protein, that's 2 servings, is the entree protein. And we didn't want to introduce any new terms, so we didn't want to introduce entree protein. The 52 and the 52 and the 56 grams, on the other hand, are total proteins for the day, which includes proteins from other sources other than the entree. So I'm thinking that might it be easier if the goal is to include the total protein requirement for the day in that section, just to put in the total daily minimum protein requirements are 52 grams for 14 to 18 years old and 56 grams for 19 or 19 years or older. And then in addition, there shall be a requirement to serve a 3rd serving from the legume groups and so forth, without specifying what each portion needs to be and how many serving is required per day. And also eliminates the need to put on the bottom where it says protein from the dairy group may be included only after dairy group serving has been met. So all of that right now seems a little confusing for the reader. Because I've talked to a lot of, when I do inspections and stuff, I talk to a lot of the food service managers and the dietitians, and they are confused by the current verbiage already. So when we add this in, I feel like it's even more confusing. I don't know. I throw it out to the group.
Thanks, Helen. Johnny, other thoughts?
I agree with Helen for the first comment for 1461, the last sentence. I definitely agree because a medical statement, which is the diet order, can supersede the regulations depending on the scenario. And just like she shared with the kosher, that's one of those where it's going to be difficult to follow the standards. So yeah, I'm in agreement with what Helen mentioned for the first part, and then definitely about the protein group. It's quite confusing. My dietitian that was reviewing and approving my menus had a very difficult time because we follow the NSLP as well. And so it got very, very confusing, even though there's a colored chart. But so I definitely agree with Helen. Simplicity is better here, one way versus multiple ways of reading this. So I just wanted to make that comment.
Thanks, Johnny. Carrie?
I also agree, same valid points as Johnny and Helen made. Maybe on the religious diets, when we do have religious diets, we also do not have a kosher kitchen and we have to special order that food for kosher diets. And it just as Helen said, we don't have control over what we're able to get. However, when we do have diets, we do try to get as close as possible to the nutritional guidelines, but they can't always match. As Johnny said, the diet orders supersede it. But something about like maybe something like Helen says, shall conform as close as possible to the nutrition standards. Also, as far as the protein, I agree again, it's also very confusing, and simplicity is the best because there has been a lot of confusion over exactly which protein. As per our first work group discussion, even among our professional group here, it got a little confusing on, well, is this entree or is this an extra protein? So to simplify the wording would be really great, because that would ensure all the youth would get all the protein that they need without all the confusion.
Thank you, Carrie. Any other comments from the group? No? Meredith.
Thank you. I guess I have some concerns about that last sentence of the first paragraph, making that less binding. I heard that a dietary order supersedes, which I'm not sure if folks meant like a medical order, which is not actually covered. Like a medical diet is not addressed in this sentence, so that seems inapplicable. I also heard concerns about kosher diets. If kosher meals need to be separated, I don't think that should also bring vegetarian and vegan diets into a category of becoming, discretionary as to whether it meets the nutrition standards. So this sentence addresses both religious, vegetarian, and vegan. If religious diets can't always conform, let's separate those out. We can modify a sentence that says something like, will conform to these nutrition standards or as close as possible, as opposed to leaving it completely open. And it sounds like that was what Carrie said they tried to do. So I just wanted to flag that I would not like to see all three categories become, untethered from the requirements in this section. Thank you.
Thank you, Meredith. Taking off my chair hat now, I would also like to comment on the last line of that paragraph. If there is a way that we can either separate religious diets to consider the feedback that we've heard from Helen, Carrie, and Johnny, so that other types of diets aren't at risk of not receiving, the adequate amounts that some of those residents do deserve. We've heard from youth previously who've talked about, vegetarian options is really being subpar. And so I want to make sure that we can strengthen that language so as not to, just give out peanut butter packets to those who want to conform to a vegan or vegetarian diet. Additionally, to the protein group comments, I wanted to ask if it would be helpful to maybe take that line that's in parentheses and maybe just bring it to the bottom of the protein group to give more of like a general, each individual would receive a total of 52 grams per day so that it's not tied into the entree servings. I think there has been a lot of emphasis from the community about knowing and having that transparency about protein intake. So I'm more on the side of having that information readily available. Helen.
So I agree with both you and Meredith concerning separating the vegetarian, vegan diet from the religious diets. Perhaps we can add something to the sentence where facilities shall have a written policy of how vegetarian or vegan diets may be requested, and then maybe a semicolon. Vegetarian or vegan diets must conform to these nutrition standards, and that one sentence. And then after that, religious diets will conform to these nutrition standards when possible. Does that sound reasonable to everyone? Because that will separate it out. And then for your second suggestion, Hailey, on the protein, my suggestions to minimize confusion was to just move in parentheses a total of 52 grams per day for ages 14 to 18 and so forth, to actually move that to the top and just put the total daily minimum protein requirements are 52 grams per day for, and et cetera, without including the 2 servings of proteins and the 14 grams or more protein and so forth. Because then it basically sets what the minimum daily protein requirements are, and then allowing the facilities to figure out how to distribute that throughout the day, rather than setting a standard of like, what is considered one serving and so forth, and then getting that confused with the total protein requirement for the day.
Thanks, Helen. And I see, Amanda, you're making some changes in real time, so we'll kind of pause to
Thank you.
see how those changes look. Yeah, no problem.
I went ahead and made the change that Helen described in the last sentence. I believe I captured it. There isn't any issues with that. I'll move on to the subsection A. Johnny?
So with the comment of the must conform to these nutritional standards for vegetarian and vegan, I find it very difficult with the sodium content. And that kind of makes me feel like, because I know that it's so hard to have a variety of the food for the cooks to do it, like, every day for the meals and fresh. So we got to go for processed foods. And so this is kind of bothering me because it's a must confirm. So I don't know if that's the right wording, because it's really very difficult to meet that requirement for the sodium. Because if you buy one processed or even 2 processed items, you're going to be already over for the whole entire meal. And that, I think it's 2,300 milligrams, or I can't remember the daily, but yeah, it's packed with sodium. And I just feel like we're going too far into this with must confirm. I think we should have a little more flexibility, because we're all trying to make sure that we're following the regulations. And this one is just kind of like going to make me feel like, just like the kosher, it's going to be out of compliance with the requirements, but it's kind of contradicting. So I don't know. I just want to throw that out there to the group.
So would, whether it be vegetarian, vegan, religious, would any diet need to conform to these nutritional standards unless a registered dietitian determined otherwise for the youth? Helen?
I actually was going to add a comment to the sodium restrictions later on, but since it came up now, I have concerns with the 2,300 milligram sodium, actually, because per the DASH diet, which is one of the reference diets in the 2020-25 dietary guidelines for Americans, it is based off a 2,000 calorie diet. And if we're looking at up to 3,200 calories, you can't develop a 3,200 calorie diet and still only contain 2,300 milligrams of sodium. That is very, very difficult to do. And it would leave basically very tasteless food for the youth. So if they are unhappy with what they're receiving now, I think they would be very upset with the bland taste of the food. So I was going to mention this later when we get down to the sodium level, because my recommendation was to go with 2,300 milligrams per day per 2,000 calories. Because then when it goes up, if your calories go up, then you have that allowance to bring the sodium up a little bit higher, which is very reasonable, I believe. So that's my comment. I know I'm just sticking it in here right now because we're talking about sodium. And also, Amanda, sorry, but it should be vegetarian and vegan diets must conform, not confirm.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
I guess maybe it's a question for Shay. How does that work on inspections if, oh no, we have our county inspectors do that portion, correct? I apologize. So maybe Helen will know. When that happens, if, you find that the sodium's too high, do you look in the youth record to say, okay, they have this special diet, so it's not a deficiency?
So right now, because the sodium level is not actually written within Title 15, it's kind of like in one of the references. So I use that as a guide. And as long as they're close to it, and I do go with the 2,300 milligrams per 2,000 calories. So if I'm inspecting a facility and I'm seeing that they've got a 2,800 or 3,000 calorie diet, then I will adjust the sodium level accordingly. And if they're close to it, then I will let it go, because I think that's reasonable.
I have a question for you, Helen, then. Just based on this conversation, it sounds like sodium has kind of been our limiting factor when trying to create some of these standards for the additional types of diets. Would you suggest then removing the sodium standard?
That's probably not a bad idea, because the sodium recommendations are embedded in the 2020-25 dietary guidelines for Americans by referencing the DASH diet. And the DASH diet does say 2,300 milligrams, but is based off a 2,000 calorie diet. So if we just blankly place 2,300 milligrams in our standard, I think that would be very difficult for facilities to comply with.
Thank you. Are there others who feel strongly about, I know we aren't necessarily at this point yet, but this can maybe inform this first section here about maybe removing the sodium language that's now included? Carrie.
I agree, removing the sodium. The sodium is an extreme challenge, especially since we also are in the school nutrition program and they have very strict guidelines too. So that naturally hinders us. And the main complaint on the feedback on all the reviews that we've received in our material is that the youth consider the food tasteless and they don't enjoy the taste of the food. And that's because we're limited on how much sodium we're able to add. And even just like with all the grain requirements, every grain has sodium naturally in it. Pork naturally has sodium in it. There's naturally found sodium, and that's pretty much all we're left with nothing. So we can't add the salt to the food, and that's what increases the flavor, the natural flavor of the food. And that's why the kids are saying that it's tasteless, is because we're not able to add the salt to and I'm not saying dump it in, but just a little bit to enhance the natural food flavor. We are not able to do that because then that puts us over that limit. So it would open a lot of doors to be able to have that natural flavor of the food. As Helen said, even opening it up 2,300 per 2,000, it would be great to take that off the food would just taste so much better for everybody. It would change the flavor profile of the food so very much. The kids would enjoy it, and it's not like we'd be dumping the sodium in there. It's just enough to bring that flavor out, and that whole the food not being flavorful, that would not be, it would be a non-issue then.
Thank you, Carrie. Helen?
Yeah, I agree with Carrie. I know that for us right now, we don't even add sodium to any of our recipes, but our sodium level is nowhere near 2,300 milligrams. And then with all the proposed changes this committee is making of increasing the grains, increasing the protein, your primary source of sodium comes from protein, grains, and dairy. And when you're talking about increasing all those groups, in fact, in your grains group, when I reviewed it, it's doubled because the portion went up from half a cup to 1 cup. So you're doubling your grains requirement. You are trying to increase your protein requirement, but yet at the same time, you're significantly dropping the sodium limitations. That's very difficult to accomplish. So I'm good with removing the sodium portion from the standards.
Thanks, Helen and Carrie. I think that also brings us back to a really good point. You know, we want to help make sure that the youth are actually eating the food that's being served to them to help reduce their feelings of hunger. So I'm also in favor of striking out H, or what was H. So then that can help us go back to the beginning of this section and take another look at the previous edits that we made regarding these special diets. So given that we just struck that out regarding sodium, is it still going to be a concern when we think about the kosher diets and some of the processed meals now? I'm seeing shakes instead of nods. Okay, great. So then can we keep the original language that we saw when we first pulled this text up? I see one. Yes, Helen.
I'm sorry, I'm the troublemaker here. But when it comes to religious diets, and specifically I'm thinking of kosher meals, I'm still concerned about it. The ability to conform with all of the nutrition standards when it comes to the grains and the fruits and vegetables. Keeping in mind that with kosher meals, we cannot offer them prepared vegetables and things like that unless you have a kosher kitchen. So you're relying on whatever vegetable is in the kosher meal that you're purchasing. And if we're upping the serving for fruits and vegetables from half a cup to 1 cup in all categories, and then you're requiring 7.5 servings of red and orange vegetables, and another 2.5 servings of dark green vegetables per week, you may not get that in the kosher meals. So it still would be difficult because the only thing we can add to kosher meals, it's like a fresh fruit. That is okay, but we can't add other prepared vegetables, other prepared beans. We're just relying on that kosher meal with the addition of maybe some kosher bread and the milk. So I think it would still be difficult to conform to all of the nutrition standards, particularly with kosher.
Thanks, Helen. So then what I'm hearing is that we would like to separate religious diets again and have them have a little bit more flexibility with the standards, given some of the points that you just made. Okay. I'm seeing good head nods from the food service staff, so it sounds like we're on the right path here. Great.
Can we have language that is similar to how Carrie described being like as close as possible, or something like that, that's just sort of expresses the intent that when it's not possible to absolutely conform, it's still the idea that it should be as close as possible.
I did, but I recall, I believe Johnny had the same concern about vegetarian and vegan diets needing to conform to these nutritional standards, and I thought that's why we wanted to group them back together. But I'm a little torn, or it sounds like maybe the group's torn on whether or not to keep vegetarian and vegan diets with religious diets, but still keeping the will conform when possible versus separating them out.
sorry, that was not my comment. I've heard most people agreeing that vegetarian and vegan should be separated from religious diets, but where we're allowing religious diets not to conform, we're still saying that it should be, it doesn't mean that every single requirement then can be ignored, but you'll align this closely as possible. But perhaps, as Helen was saying, there's one or two things that needs to be loosened in order to serve a kosher diet.
Johnny?
Yeah, so with the sodium removal, it kind of my comment goes away with the paragraph or sentence in the first paragraph. I think how will conform and then when possible, that's good for me. I think that leaves the open end of the possibility of us not being able to, but will when we can. So I'm good with how it reads. I just don't I don't mind it having it how it's reading right now. So I just want to throw that out there.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Meredith, I'm sorry, did your question get answered, or were you looking for a specific language? Or did you want to add specific language to the last line of the first paragraph?
I'll let Carrie go and see if her hand is up. Maybe she has thoughts.
Okay. Here, you took back your hand.
Sorry, I hit the
No
wrong
worries.
button.
Okay. No worries.
I'm also an allergy sufferer, so my hearing's a little rough and my head's not so clear. So thank you for bearing with me too today. I agree with Meredith on as close as possible, because then when they're getting, that would help the people who are auditing, I would believe, because they would say, okay, well, why couldn't you meet the requirements? And we could show why. Well, this is why. And here we could show when we're being audited, that we could show this is how close we came and this is why. That way they would be able to be more accountable for it. So I think, Meredith, is that what you are going for? Because yeah, sometimes if it's possible, some might say, oh, well, it's just not possible, and chalk it off. And this, as close as possible, will show that there's some effort needed. And I think that's important.
Thanks, Carrie. If we're good, and have we kind of met consensus on that line there? Yeah. Okay, great. Then moving back down to the protein group, Helen did make a suggestion to take the line in parentheses and actually bring that up to the top.
So everything I have highlighted, move it to before 1 serving equals?
To the top after protein group.
Okay.
Is that correct, Helen?
Instead of saying a total of 52 grams, I was thinking putting the daily minimum protein requirements are. And then after that, we can see, yeah, we can remove starting from where it says 2 servings of protein shall be served daily. We can actually remove that and just leave it at that is the total daily minimum. And each facility can determine how they're going to distribute that throughout the day.
You want the rest of this removed, or because
I
the soup
think the
serving
group,
sets up
yeah, I
this.
think the group may still want examples of protein in there. So where it says beef, veal, lamb, pork, and then also other protein alternatives, I'm sure that the group wants that included in there. So just the, yeah. I think protein. Then we can remove also where it says 1 serving equals 14 grams of protein. Can remove that sentence. And then leave the, in addition, there shall be a requirement to serve a 3rd serving from the legumes. And then we can remove protein from the dairy group may be included only after dairy group serving have been met. A sentence in blue.
I think that was a change that came from the last meeting. Yeah, because it looks like I did this addition on February 28th.
It did, yeah, because we were talking about the entree protein and how you can't use protein from the dairy as part of that entree protein. So that's why that sentence was added on. But if we're talking about just the minimum daily protein requirements, then we no longer need to worry about whether we get it from the dairy or not.
Thanks, Helen. Meredith?
This is just a process comment for me, Amanda. When you're deleting changes that I think were made at the last meeting, now it's really hard to track because I think now we've lost because you're the same editor. I don't know if there's a way to change your what's the word, like your
No, but everyone has a copy of the draft that was available this morning.
Okay. Because some of these I think were Laura's suggestions, so I'm having trouble when you're changing things in real time before the group had like discussed the comment. All of a sudden things get lost, so a lot of back and forth.
Well, if you'd like, I can back up some if there was another comment that you had on that was missed.
Mostly just now I'm a little confused because with Helen's deletions of the serving descriptions, now we have this sentence that says a requirement to serve a 3rd serving now kind of doesn't really make sense. So I'm trying to back up and see how this all is supposed to work. And if others who do meal or menu planning have thoughts on this, like the way it was previously like describing servings, how these pieces fit together now.
Hold on one second, Meredith. We're just talking internally about something. Can you just hold on one second and we'll address that concern?
Okay, let me know if it doesn't make sense. Trying to explain what's going on.
Okay, so we completely understand the concern, Meredith. The amount of work that Amanda is doing on screen is a lot, and we are, yes, technically changing the language that Laura had provided, but it's in the draft. We cannot possibly preserve that on here in real time. So we can lay them side by side at another time, but it's almost impossible to try to add that to the editing that we're doing right here.
My suggestion would be that you can have different like authors, so you actually can edit on top of someone's edit, but maybe
yeah, this is already,
so just
yeah, it's already.
Can I just finish, Allison? But maybe instead what we can just do is like the first time someone makes a comment, not immediately start typing it in, because we can have a little bit of discussion about, okay, here's an idea, okay, here's how it might also work. We are getting really good brainstorming, but it
it becomes really difficult to have that conversation
Yeah.
when things get lost immediately the first time someone makes a comment.
Yeah, you know what? Can we take a 5-minute break? We're managing a lot in our notes over here, and it is really difficult to capture all the text. Can we just take a 5-minute break and let us brainstorm over here at BSCC? We totally understand, but you know, we do hit some level of capacity. Let us talk for a minute about what's the best thing to show, and if we wait till the end of discussion, then what we'll have to do is make sure that everybody repeats what we're saying. Again, we're trying to show everybody in real time. And if everybody wouldn't mind, Hyla, I hope that's okay. Just a quick 5-minute break for us to regroup and figure a couple things out here. That would be really helpful for us.
Sure thing. Thanks.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank
if we
you.
can come back at 10:02.
Perfect.
everyone.
Thank you so much.
Welcome back to those who are rejoining. BSCC staff, just wanted to do a quick check-in, see where we're at.
So I just wanted to, again, I want to acknowledge the amount of editing that Amanda is doing. I mean, she has this setup over there that's just incredible. So she is the author, even though Laura had made those changes. Our internal process is to have the documents in under one author because this is the basis for submitting them to OAL. So we can't do the color changes. That's what I was trying to say. So they are Amanda's edits. So the best we can do is each of you have a copy of the changes that Laura has made, but we're not technically right now able to show those on the screen. And then second, and Hyla, please let us know what you think about this. So in the past, people have wanted to be able to see the edits as the conversation's happening. And so that's what Amanda is doing on the screen. Would you prefer that as we're having discussion, we make no edits, and then maybe when the work group members have stopped talking, Hyla, you can then direct Amanda to type in something specific? It just we'll take paper notes or something and figure that part out. What are your thoughts about that?
I hear, value to like both types of approaches. Are we able, as the work group members, are we able to pull up the text where we can see Laura's track changes maybe on another monitor or split our screen, and then also in real time see some of the track changes that Amanda is making so that we can kind of keep eye on both?
Amanda's checking to see if we can do that split screen.
Okay. Or also if us as work group members, maybe if we have the capacity to do that on our own. I know I work off of 2 monitors for that.
Yeah, that might be easier. And again, I really apologize. We are, we think we're super, technologically advanced in getting all this stuff done. So sorry if it doesn't meet everybody's specifications. So having it up on the second screen or printing it out would be super helpful, and we'll take that into consideration the next time.
Thank you. I don't mean to call you out, Meredith, but is that an approach that we can try and take as we move forward? I also understand like we want it to be accessible.
Where it's hardest is where it's easy to see when we're tracking changes over black text, but it's when we lose the things that were done, and it's a little hard to tell what was done in between meetings versus what was done at the last meeting. So I would just love to hear from other folks who do facility meal planning. Like it used to talk about servings, and the suggestion was to take out this concept of servings, but now there's still a lingering reference to a serving. So I just want to, before we lose where it all started, get a sense from other folks like how that works, whether that serving guidance was useful, or if it makes sense to just drop it all together.
Helen?
What if we just add the wording where we started to give examples of what the protein are? We just put protein servings can include And so you've got your servings there. And then below that, you have an additional third serving of the legumes. Would that be helpful?
Per a previous suggestion, however, we eliminated the 2 servings from the text, right? So I think what Meredith is addressing is that lingering line of the 3rd serving. And I do want to flag that what is different in the current text is now we have the total servings, whereas before it wasn't there. And so maybe the best way to go about it to keep that total daily serving is to remove that lingering line where it says in addition, etc., and then protein group. Carrie, I see your hand.
I think the original purpose is to make sure the youth get legumes in there as their protein 3 times a week. So being that the other changes are made, maybe it would make sense to reword it instead of a 3rd serving of legumes 3 days a week. Get rid of that. Just say after the example of all the proteins, just say 3 of the protein servings per week shall include legumes. Because that way we already are going on the total servings. And then by just saying 3 days a week, the legume should be the protein, might simplify that like what we're going for and still get that point across without being too confusing. That's just my thought.
Thanks for that suggestion, Carrie. Amanda, sorry to bother you. Would it be possible to share the text if you're making any changes at this point?
I didn't realize they weren't on the screen. Sorry.
No worries, thank you. And Amanda, could you quickly, sorry, just address any changes that you've made since we've begun?
No, I haven't made any that I haven't been instructed to make any, so I haven't. I know Helen suggested changing protein may include to adding the word servings so that this word servings didn't seem odd, but some other recommendations came in. So I haven't made any of those changes that were just discussed.
Thank you.
And then that sentence that we were on, that Helen recommended removing, that Meredith may or may not have a comment on before we went to break. I left that one back in there just in case there is a comment still, just an FYI in case anyone sees that and thought it was still gone.
Okay, before we make any changes to the text, then Helen, did you have a comment?
Yeah, that was part of my comment was what Amanda just addressed. So I was suggesting if we wanted the words serving to be consistent, then maybe protein servings may include, but is not limited to, or remove serving altogether. And then where it says legumes, we can put like, there shall be, or legumes shall be served three times a week. And that also can remove the word serve per serving or whatever. So 2 different options.
I just had a question about that, Helen, if the sentence says shall be served, but doesn't reference the concept of a serving, does the concept serving give you like a size, like an amount? In other words, like just serving it, but not giving a serving. Is there a difference there?
Yes, Helen?
So it used to be more specified by what a serving is, and that's from, if you scroll down, it's all the different examples of portion sizes. And generally for legumes, it's 1 cup. But if we're removing all of that because they can look it up, then I don't know if we want to specify what a serving of legumes is within this context. I think the idea is just to make sure that they're getting some legumes a couple times a week. That was the initial
And so when
purpose.
you say, sorry, when you say they can look it up, there is a definition of a serving, is, I guess.
Right.
Okay.
And you see where all those like the 2 to 3 ounces without bone, lean cooked meat and so forth, all those represent a serving. But it used to be included in the text. And the suggestion from last meeting was to exclude them, so to be consistent with the adult Title 15.
Okay, that makes
Does
sense.
that make sense?
Yeah, so it
Okay.
sounds like what you're saying is that there is a definition of a serving. So I would
Right.
suggest that a serving of legume shall be provided 3 days a week. And that way we're still referencing like an amount as opposed to just a category.
But I thought the concern was the word serving being in there, like what is a serving, or because we didn't address serving on top, then all of a sudden we're saying there's a serving of legumes.
No,
I thought that was where there was
my concern was that like it referenced a third serving, and so it was like it was a sequence without a beginning. I'm happy to have the word serving because I think that it connotates an amount, and it sounds like that does have a definition externally that folks who are experts can reference. So I like keeping that word. It's more that like we talked about 2 over here and 3 over here. So if to Carrie's point, if we can get 3 servings a week, it sounds like we're maintaining the intent.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And there was previously a definition of serving that we struck out, which was 1 serving equals 14 grams. So that if we still want to exclude it from the text, but I think Meredith, that might actually help kind of satisfy what it is that you were looking for with the serving definition.
I thought that what Helen was saying is that we don't need the definition because the definitions exist elsewhere and we don't need to keep replicating stuff here. And that sounds right to me. We don't need to like duplicate. It's more that there is a reference that the nutrition experts can go to know what that means, that it has this meaning in the dietary guidelines. Is that where you go to find it, in the dietary guidelines? Yeah.
Great. Is there a need to define legumes in this text? Yes, Helen.
I think legume speaks for itself. Beans, basically. So, they have a variety of legumes that they can serve. I don't know what is the group's feeling on this? Do we really need to define legumes?
Johnny?
If it's mentioned elsewhere and the dietitian is knowing where to find that definition, I don't think it needs to be defined any further than the word legume.
Thanks, Johnny. Carrie?
I agree. Legumes a specific category, and there's a certain list of foods that the professionals will know who's doing the planning, and so we don't need the definition for that. I do have another suggestion because the option here, it says legumes and or 3 servings from another protein group. shall be served 3 days a week. It would, because got rid of how many servings and all that, I think it would be better to say legumes and get rid of the and or 3 servings from another protein group to make sure they get their legumes, because if you put in the and or 3 servings from another protein group, they may not get their legumes. And so we want to make sure they do get their legumes 3 days a week or 3 times a week.
Thanks, Carrie. I do want to ask our youth advocates who are in our work group, if in your experience and also what you think about the youth who are viewing this text, would they understand what a legume is if they're trying to make sure that they're getting the adequate protein source? Meredith, I see your hand up.
I was just hoping to tweak, Amanda, the wording. I think people were okay with a serving of legumes shall be provided 3 days a week, so that we're still talking about servings. And I don't know, I remember Helen saying 3 times per week. I don't know if days or times matters to folks.
Okay, whatever the group does, I've been instructed to not type on screen or make these changes in text until I've given instruction by Hyla. If that's not the case, or you want me to make them on screen, let me know. I'm willing to adjust accordingly. So that's why I've been putting these options over in a comment on the side.
Yeah, so I'm talking about the comment bubble.
So you want to say a serving of legumes shall be served 3 times a week? Is that what your suggestion is?
Yes. Helen, did you have a thought on days or times? I think it's currently days.
I think currently it says days, but times might actually be better because sometimes it might be served at breakfast and then included with something else for dinner, but it gives the facilities more option to juggle that. So perhaps 3 times a week is, the wording is better.
So if we do it that way and it's 3 times a week, could it technically be 3 times in one day? And it's not necessarily what we want, I'm assuming.
I think that's a possibility, but doubtful. I think anybody who's doing menu planning would probably try to stay away from having legumes with all 3 meals within the same day to get away with the requirement. But it is possible, yes.
I guess leaving it as days doesn't prohibit you from doing a breakfast and a dinner. It just means that you'd have to do 2 more days. So I'm fine with leaving it as 3 days per week.
Okay, then let's go ahead and see what this looks like on the text. Amanda, if you're ready to do so. Great, thanks, Amanda. So for the workgroup members, what is currently reflected under subsection A, are we okay with what is reflected on the screen? And are we okay to move on? Helen, I see your hand.
Yeah, I know that the protein from the dairy group sentence was added by Laura, and I appreciate all the work that she's done, by the way. I didn't mention that earlier and I should have. But I do think that sentence no longer needs to be there because we're addressing the daily minimum protein requirements. So we no longer have to be concerned with not counting the dairy before we count the other protein and so forth.
Just to clarify, that was a change that was made in our previous work group. I'm looking at the original, the briefing materials, and that was edited by Amanda.
Is there any objection to it being removed since Helen's explained why we no longer need it?
I don't totally understand why we don't need it. Sorry. It was put in there by someone who's not here to explain, or Hyla, are you saying that this came from our last meeting?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Do you remember why it went in?
I recall that we were not wanting to use dairy as another source for, or like an additional source for protein, just to hit that protein count. Helen, do you recall?
Yes, because we were counting a serving of protein as 14 grams and 2 servings of protein were the requirement. Therefore, we don't want to count the protein coming from the dairy as part of that 28 grams. And that's why that sentence was included. However, since we are now putting in the daily minimum protein requirements, that means that's a protein requirement for the entire day, which now includes not only protein from your entree protein, but also your grains, your dairy, and anything else that may contain protein. We no longer need to exclude the dairy from being counted toward that minimum daily protein. Does that make sense?
I think so.
Okay, that's why I feel the sentence is no longer necessary.
Okay, so the suggestion to remove that line regarding protein from the dairy group, et cetera, are there any comments that would like to keep it? Does anyone feel strongly about keeping it? I see no hands. Okay, Amanda, can we strike that out? Great. So as it looks on the screen, are people in agreement that we can accept this text here and then move on? Yes, I'm seeing some head nods and then some non-head nods. Okay, please raise your hand or unmute if you do not agree. Otherwise, I think we are okay to move on to the dairy group. Subsection B. Great. Okay. So here, Laura has made a comment and recommended to remove the evaporated or dry milk to help support higher quality meal components. And this is, and I know she's not here, unfortunately, so I can't necessarily ask her, but my understanding is that with evaporated or dry, that cannot be mixed in with water to then be a serving, but it can be included in other like cakes, pastries, or other meals, correct? Okay. Great. Alrighty. Are we okay with accepting that recommendation? All right. And then moving on, we have
Helen
here.
has a comment.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Helen.
I'm okay with the wording in this section, Hyla. The only concern I have is where it says the daily requirement is 3, because we changed it from 4 to 3. does that also apply to pregnant and lactating females? Because the general recommendation, at least for lactating female, it's 4. And I know currently at my facilities, we already serve 4 milks a day to all the youth, regardless of whether they're pregnant or lactating or not. But we still get requests from medical for additional milk. So I'm concerned, does the medical community know that 3 is the requirement and not 4? Because if we start reducing it to 3, there might be an increased request for more milk from medical. So that's my comment. It's just a concern I have.
Thanks, Helen. Johnny, you have a follow-up comment?
Yeah, I would rather have the request versus it being standard for 4. Due to the amount of waste of ordering, the space. I mean, having a reduction of 1 is substantially benefit to the facilities that have the milk. And in regards to the pregnancy, that's a prescribed order. So absolutely, that will be fulfilled. But yeah, I'm for the 3, and any prescribed increase by the medical staff absolutely will execute. But I just wanted to make that comment.
Thanks, Johnny. Carrie?
I also agree with Johnny. It's not a problem at all having the medical order for the pregnant, lactating female youth. I agree with Laura's comment because reducing this from 4 to 3 would give more calories so we could get heartier entrees, and it would be more satisfying to the youth, and they'd have that more fulfilling. Because it's not a problem at all, because we always get a medical order for pregnant, lactating youth. So it's not an issue at juvenile in the food service level.
Thanks, Carrie. And maybe that can be captured in the next section when we start talking about medical diets, if we wanted to explicitly talk about pregnant and lactating incarcerated youth as well. But great point. Thanks for bringing that up, Helen. Okay. So it sounds like we are in agreement, or at least I don't hear any opposition in terms of reducing the daily requirement from 4 to 3. And then the next line here, which was also recommended by Laura, where fluid milk substitutes non-dairy beverages shall be nutritionally equivalent to fluid milk. An example is soy milk. Are there any concerns about this inclusion of alternatives to dairy milk? No? Okay. I don't see, sorry, I have to just look at everyone in my screen. Okay, thank you. Great. So then we can go ahead and accept that.
And was there consensus on the first one, evaporated or dry? No objections to striking that?
That's correct. Thanks, Amanda. Alrighty, so now moving into vegetable group. Okay, and this is where we did break it up. Previously, it was fruits and vegetables combined, but now we have subsection C, vegetable group, which includes fresh, frozen, and canned vegetables. Daily requirement shall be at least 4 servings. 1 serving equals 1 cup cooked vegetables or 2 cups fresh leafy greens. It's very technical. 7.5 servings per week must be red and orange vegetables. 2.5 servings per week must be dark green vegetables. At least 1 serving per day must be of fresh vegetables. Recommend only fresh or frozen vegetables are served instead of canned. If canned vegetables are served, require less than or equal to 220 milligrams of sodium per serving. Any comments on this recommendation here? Helen.
Yeah, my only comment is I noticed that the vitamin A and vitamin C requirements got removed, which generally, if we've got the red and orange vegetables, that's fine. But there's nothing really specific, even on the fruit side, that addresses the vitamin C, fruits or vegetables. So that's one comment. And then my second comment is just that by increasing the serving size to 1 cup, we've doubled the requirement for fruits and vegetables. And operationally, I don't know how feasible that is, especially for facilities where they have limited tray space to fit everything in. That might be a challenge. So those are just some comments.
Thanks, Helen. Others? Okay. So operationally speaking, Helen, that is a good point about tray capacity in order to hold a 1 cup serving. Because we are trying to align with DGA as much as possible, what would you give any alternative serving size for cooked vegetables? Or can you think of an alternative way how to still make this work?
Well, generally, a serving of fruits and vegetable has been 1/2 cup. Now I know that, the newer guidelines and even for school lunch, school breakfast program puts it at 1 cup. But I think these requirements are based off like a 3,000 or 3,200 calorie diet. And for the youth, they not necessarily need to be that high. So these are minimum guidelines. So should we set the guidelines at a minimum rather than a maximum, which is kind of what I'm seeing here?
Johnny?
Yeah, I'm in agreement. Because if we're talking about increasing the calories as a whole, I believe we went from what was it, 25 to 3,000, and now it's 25 to 3,200. I can't remember. So this would help us focusing on the minimum and maximizing the calories elsewhere. And I could be wrong, but correct me if I'm wrong, Helen. That's what my take is that we don't have to serve the 1 cup like the National School Lunch Program.
Yeah, Title 15 is different from the National School Lunch and School Breakfast Program. So there's no requirement to follow their serving size. We can still continue to follow the standard serving size, which is just 1/2 cup. I think Laura's pulling this from the daily food guide, or I'm not sure actually where she pulled it from, DGA. Yeah, so she's using the USDA school lunch program. So she's using that as part of the for the serving size. And for Title 15, I don't think there's a requirement to follow that.
Johnny?
Yeah, I think she is using of course, the USDA and NSLP, and it's not I don't recommend we follow that. We've got to stick to the 1/2 cup, because 1 cup is going to keep us that's going to be our new minimum. So.
Is there any objection to me changing these or changing this to 1/2 cup and changing this back to 1/2 cup?
I think that if we are trying to strengthen these standards and use DGA as our reference point, that we remain loyal to that as much as possible and keep the 1 cup cooked. And that doesn't necessarily have to be served as like a single serving, right? Like that can be incorporated in a casserole, in a pot meal, or other creative ways. And there is also something here that says that at least 1 per day must be a fresh vegetable. So can it also I mean, given what's written in the language, that could ultimately be 2 servings of a vegetable, a whole fresh vegetable, and then do away with the 1 cup cooked. I'm trying to take into consideration, you know, like tray space and just like how it would play out when food service staff is preparing these meals. Are there any other comments on this line here? If I may, I would like to hear from the youth advocates who are interacting with some of the youth on the ground, to know in real time what their experience is with the vegetables, and maybe like what some of their requests would be in terms of enhancing the menu.
Do hot Takis count as a vegetable?
It's a corn product.
In my house, they do.
Helen?
Yeah, just another point is the food waste too, because we know that it's already ongoing now. A lot of the vegetables do not get eaten. And so if we increase this from what was previously roughly 2 cups, now it's 4 cups, I think you're going to increase the food waste as well.
Yeah, that's a great point in terms of food waste, something to keep in mind.
I agree. When I see trays go back in, there's, you know, everything's eaten except for the vegetables or even a fresh salad. And we have good salads that we put on a tray almost daily.
Thanks, Marguerite. Okay, so what I'm hearing from the comments then is that there's a recommendation to reduce it back down to a 1/2 cup. Okay, is anyone opposed to this? Besides myself, obviously.
I was just gonna
Okay.
say, the way you described it, Hyla, makes sense to me that it can be included in a dish if tray space is the concern, and that maybe also addresses the food waste, because I know my own kids, a vegetable by itself, not as appealing, but you can sneak it in. So I just wanted to say, I mean, if there are solutions other than reducing vegetables to address something like food waste, like you know, creative recipes, that I think that sounds like a, you know, a good nutritional option.
Yeah, thanks, Meredith. And I see Jordan, your hand is up.
Yeah, I just wanted to agree with Meredith. If there was like a creative way to include it, because yeah, like I'll admit, like I'm not a salad eater. I would never eat the salad. But I feel like if it was in, you know, like something else, it'd be more appealing and I'd most likely eat it, you know. I'm sure that applies, you know. And I know a lot of people that don't like vegetables or certain things. So like mushrooms is a big one. Like I love mushrooms and I can eat them by themselves, but like there's a lot of people that don't. You know what I mean? But like it's just like stuff like that. So it's like putting it in something that, you know, could mask the taste. I'm sure it would be a lot more appealing and it would reduce the waste. Unless they're that picky and they're like, oh, I see it. No, I'm not doing it. You know, like so I don't know. That's what, you know, that's what I would assume, you know.
Thanks, Jordan. I think, you really speak to a good point in terms of like the creativity that there are opportunities for that. And given our previous conversation before about taking out the sodium requirements, I think that there is some capacity to kind of play with what meals are being served and trying to promote vegetables while inside. And I'm also continuing to think about the youth who have talked about being hungry. And so if we're able to improve how vegetables are being served, then the youth are actually going to eat the fiber that's being given to them and can help kind of stave off some of that hunger that they continue to bring up. Carrie?
I agree with you on keeping the 1 cup. We currently serve 1 cup of vegetables. We found mashed potatoes and we mash up cauliflower in it. We do Alfredo. We mash up Alfredo in it. We have a mock apple pie that's nothing but zucchini. So and I'm willing to share recipes. But there's a lot of, in fact, I have a cookie that's made out of black beans. So there's ways to do it. I have a pesto that's nut free, but it's made out of kale. So there is a lot of good ways to incorporate the vegetables. And what I found by increasing the vegetables, that's how they get the bigger portion sizes because of their more nutrient dense. And getting creative and showing them this is a good opportunity to show them how they can have vegetables in a really good kind of way and educate them as to how to follow the dietary guidelines and to make healthy choices. And so I'm for keeping the 1 cup. I know I'm not popular right now, but it's really great on our menu because they're able to get they're able to get more food on their tray. And I know bottom line, that's what the kids want is full tummies. And it's just, yeah, it may be a challenge, but we definitely can work together. And I'm always willing to share recipes on how to do those different foods to be able to get them to enjoy their vegetables. And so that's my.
Thanks, Carrie. And we know who to go to learn about best practices. Given the previous topic about food waste, have you experienced the residents at your facility like waving off when you serve those cookies or when you have these creative recipes? What's their consumption like?
No, they enjoy it. I have them try it. I do food taste tests. I do food surveys for them. And I ask them what they think, and I don't tell them right away. I don't tell them they're black bean cookies. I don't tell them there's cauliflower in their mashed potato, and I don't tell them there's zucchini in their apple pie. So I'm a little sneaky, but they enjoy it. And then afterwards, then I'll tell them, I'm not trying to lie, but then I'll tell them, hey, guess what? You just tried zucchini and liked it. Hey, guess what? You just ate kale and enjoyed it. So that way it opens their minds because the key is not telling them exactly what's in it, having them taste it and enjoy it. And I've also found for the kids, it usually takes about 4 or 5 tries on a food to have them adjust to be able to really take an opinion. So when you do food taste tests, you can't just do one shot and like, oh yeah, it's good, it's bad. It takes a few times to try it out, get their feedback of like, oh, it's okay or no, and I even ask them, well, what do you not like about it? And then if it needs more seasonings and herbs or whatever, we're open to it. So that's I found a really successful because by also having the food tests and the surveys, the kids are definitely in the buy-in and hey, they created that recipe then and they're all about eating it. They get excited about it.
Thanks, Carrie. And now I can't wait to hear your thoughts about including the youth in the meal planning because you already spoke to that. Jordan, I see your hand up.
Oops, my bad. It was accident.
All right, no worries. So, okay.
How do I take it down?
Um,
Do I raise it again?
you should maybe press the same button.
Oh crap. All right, there we go.
Okay, all good. Thanks, Jordan. Okay, so now the suggestion has kind of come back to accepting Laura's recommendation. Is anyone feeling strongly about reducing it back down to a half cup? Okay, are we okay to accept what is written on the vegetable section? I see head nods.
I have one question just about the last sentence. Does it mention sodium again based on our sodium discussion earlier? If there's any hesitations there, just with that sodium portion, since we're on that paragraph.
Thanks, Amanda. Helen?
Yeah, I agree with that, with the last sentence. Especially when it comes to inspection, it would be really difficult for the inspector to determine if you're using canned vegetable, whether that is actually less than 220 milligrams of sodium per serving. Perhaps we should just remove that last sentence.
Is there anyone who feels the opposite and wants to keep it? Okay, Amanda, can we see it struck out? Great, thank you. Okay, and if there are no other comments on that section, let's go ahead and move on to fruit group. Quickly before we actually get into that, Shay, how are we doing on time? Do we need a break or anything?
I was just looking at my watch. We're at 10:48, and I was thinking if we did take a break and then we come back and say in 10 minutes, we would have an hour before lunch. Do we take a quick 10-minute break?
Okay, yeah. Work group members, how do we feel about a break? Yep, okay, great. Let's come back at 10:58 and then we'll pick up on the fruit group.
Thank you.
Thanks. Welcome back, everyone. We are at 10:58.
We've decided that we'd like to have the next meeting in person in Carrie's facility so she can cook for us. Just saying.
I'm
No
all for
pressure.
it. Bring it on.
No pressure. We'll do the dishes.
Oh, that's okay. I'll even do dishes after the meeting. I love my job, so it's all good.
I'll take the trash out.
I'll cut the vegetables.
All right, well, welcome back.
Too bad
everyone.
you're not here today. We're having beef and bean tostadas for lunch, and we had biscuits and gravy. It's homemade from scratch for breakfast this morning.
That sounds
should be-
delicious.
That should be the standards for all facilities, to be honest.
Yeah, does everyone partake in scratch cooking? Based on public comment, it did not seem like it did.
No, not here in Alameda County.
Hmm. Okay.
We used to, for San Luis Obispo County, we used to have a full kitchen and a full staff. Understand though, for smaller counties, financially, that is just a huge expense. And so, you know, it is ideal, absolutely. And we just couldn't manage it anymore. And so, you know, we had to decommission our kitchen and our meal service because of the financial requirements. I mean, we're just hoping to hang on to our juvenile hall because our population's so low. And the reality is, a board of supervisors, you know, because juvenile halls are expensive to run, You know, if you have great programming for a small amount of kids, it costs a lot of money. You know, I have 3 kids I've got 13 kids in this building right now, but it costs, you know, $5 million a year to run it. So I love what Carrie's doing, and it just, you know, I wish we had never gotten rid of our kitchen, because at least we could have had a culinary program. But yeah, it's challenging. So I think, you know, even when you know, the comments from Fly about having you know, in on-site cooking ideal and just operational, it's really challenging. So we have kitchenettes that the kids can do stuff, and we have a garden that they can bring stuff in, you know, and a barbecue. But it is challenging. So, but definitely ideal.
Yeah, that's great feedback. And hopefully with the way that we've tried to revise these nutrition standards, that these more private companies, or when we are outsourcing food service, that they can try and reach the same standard menu. I think that's why a lot of concerns come up, is because there are some disparities between in-house cooking and then also outsourced. So that's our goal as our work group, just enhance the food overall. So then on that note, Amanda, can we see the text? Thank you. All right, and so we will continue on in the fruit group. So most of these changes here have been recommended by Laura, and I'll just go ahead and read off. Fruit group includes fresh, frozen, dried, and canned fruits. The daily requirement shall be at least 2 servings. 1 serving equals 1 cup fruit, 1 small apple, 1 medium pear or 3 medium plums, 1 large orange, peach, or banana, or a quarter to, okay, sorry, a little bit confused there. 2 cup dried fruit. 1 serving per day may be substitute for an additional serving from the vegetable group. At least 1 serving per day must be a fresh fruit. Recommended only fresh or frozen fruits are served. Require canned and frozen fruit with no added sweeteners. Canned fruit must be in 100% fruit juice or water. All right, comments here on this newly revised text?
I think it's way too much in the weeds and would really be difficult to, how do you inspect to that when you have about 100% fruit or juice or water? I think it's, I would like to know how you inspect to that and operationally, especially if people are outsourcing.
Johnny?
So usually it's light syrup. I'm not too familiar with canned fruit, 100% fruit juice and water. I'm used to light syrup. So I'm not sure where that came from. But in addition to that, definitely agree with the juice not counting towards a fruit component, because it is high in calories and it doesn't register in their body as much as a nice apple or orange itself. So I just was looking at Laura's comments on the right.
Thanks, Johnny. Helen?
Yeah, I agree with Johnny on not using the fruit juice. And then also it is true that a lot of canned fruits are in light syrup. It's difficult to get a good variety of canned fruit if you don't accept it in light syrup, because not all of them will come in 100% juice or water. And again, you know, just a comment is that it doubles our amount, a required amount for fruits based on the 1 cup serving. But I think the group is in agreement with that, so I'll leave that alone. Just comment.
Thanks, Helen. Marguerite?
See, this is where I get a little challenged with the weeds that we're getting into. We're given examples of, you know, small apple, a medium pear, 3 medium plums. Well, what if we're doing berries? What if we're doing a apricot? So we're doing these examples, but it's so specific that it almost makes it sound like you can't do any other fruit. This is all you can do. And now we took out a half a grapefruit, so no grapefruits allowed. And so I understand the intent to give examples, but then maybe examples are, because I think this is too prescribed and it creates so much focus that it takes away, an avocado is a fruit, a tomato is a fruit. Is that in here? You know, so let's be, I think, a little bit more broad, and so that people aren't stuck with a very narrow-minded way we can go about this.
Thanks, Marguerite. Johnny?
Yeah, I agree with her comment. If we're not going to be specific in the vegetable group, why do we need to be specific in the fruit group? And you're absolutely right, Marguerite, that a fruit is a fruit as long as the dietitian is following the vitamin A, C, and all that good stuff in regards to the regulations. So yeah, and they know where to put it on which day, and variety and inconsistency is actually where we want to put the fruit, not having pineapple 2 days in a row and so on. So yeah, I think less is more here, and that's my comment.
Thanks, Johnny. Carrie?
I agree, because then people might think that's the only fruit. However, I do want to add that dried fruit is substantially less a serving for an equivalent, so that might need to stay because they don't need a whole cup of raisins or dried cranberries. So if considering like an outside contract company might need to know that, like the dried fruit is less, sort of like the leafy greens is double. So there's proper nutrition, but like just a cup of fresh fruit, or like then just keep the dried fruit portion if it's dried. That way they can know the distinct difference.
Thank you,
And plus,
Carrie.
the dried fruit has so much more sugar in it.
Sochi?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a kind of like a visionary operational comment on how here in Alameda County fruit is just like available. There's a tray of fruit in the unit for each unit just in case as youth get hungry throughout the day. And if BSCC is coming to inspect and there's like a different qualification for fruit to be outside of the unit, I mean in the unit, but outside, like not in the tray of the youth, would that affect like the youth having a snack throughout the day that is a fresh fruit? That's just like a tray outside, like a tray of fruit, kind of like a tray of fruit that we have like at the dinner table. I just wanted to make that comment.
Johnny?
So I know that I had a meeting with San Bernardino County Probation, and what they're doing is they do have a fruit basket that's available in between meals, not in addition to the meal. So I'm for an in-between meal, served between from breakfast to lunch, lunch to dinner, and even after school, because then it does not affect the menu regulations for what we follow. It's National School Lunch Program and Title 15. So I know this group here has, they're following Title 15, and some are doing both like me. But yeah, fruit basket that's not a part of a meal, I'm for. But if it's a part of a meal, it has to be counted. So that's the only comment I had.
Thanks, Johnny. So what I'm hearing then is, Sochi, what you're probably referring to is what is maybe considered a snack at the facility and not considered as part of the meal. So in that case, it should not be affected with this revised text that you see on the screen.
Okay, great, because I agree, yeah, with Johnny, like it should be, youth should have, it would be great for youth to have like a freedom of snacks than just peanut butter and jelly or a bag of chips, so I know that a fruit sometimes is always that option, but I hope not, I hope that our answer was that we keep it separate so we can have, the facility can have some form of flexibility in providing a snack that's healthy, like fruits and like fruits. Thank you.
Thanks, Sochi. Meredith?
I agree with what I think was being described as basically just like having it an offering that's available throughout the day. Is that what folks are talking about? I think though, the way this section is written is that like it does say snacks may be included as part of the minimum diet. So if we wanted to specify that something like an offering of a snack throughout the day doesn't qualify as a serving of fruit, I think we might need to say that because of the way this section is written. So gee, I do think your concern is valid. I'm not sure that it's addressed here, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Because of the language at the top of this section that says snacks may be included as part of the minimum diet.
Can you share where you're referencing?
Yes, if you scroll up to hard to describe, it's sort of like the second paragraph right above A here in this section. Thank you, Amanda.
Okay, and so your concern then, Meredith, is that it's because of this sentence here that may take away the option of having fruit available?
No, just that what I thought I heard Sochi saying was that while we want snacks to be available throughout the day, and that seems to be like a good thing when it's a basket of fruit, that technically that might count as the serving. In other words, I thought I heard Sochi say basket of fruit is good, but it shouldn't replace the required serving. And what I'm saying is I think it maybe could, like a facility could put out a basket of fruit and check that box. And if we didn't want that to be replacing this serving, we might need to say that.
Gotcha, thanks. Helen, do you have, I see your hand up, and do you also have thoughts to Meredith's point?
Yeah, I just want to share with the group as an example what we did with one of our facilities. They were concerned that some of the kids were complaining they were hungry, like between lunch and dinner. So what we did was we took a fruit that was offered at dinner and we put that in a bag so that they could take it back to their cottages at the end of lunch and then use that as part of their in between lunch and dinner snack. So that was an option that we came up with, but that particular fruit was included as their dinner. So it counted. And I think that if we do offer like a bowl of fruit, which I think is a great idea, not all facilities could do it, but certainly a lot of them can. I think it should count because we've just increased the amount of fruits and vegetable now in our Title 15 requirement. And it may be difficult to get all of that into the breakfast, lunch, and dinner meals alone. And why should it not count if it's part of their snack? Because we also now have included that we need to provide a snack between breakfast and lunch and one between lunch and dinner and then an HS snack. So if they're getting fruits for snack, they're great snacks. Why would we not want to count that as part of their total for the day? I guess I'm a little confused why we don't want to count it.
Thanks, Helen. And you do bring up a good point with the fact that we've increased the number of servings too. So that's something to keep in mind for sure. Marguerite?
We may want to consider like a snack section in this because I think I agree with Meredith and I agree with the other perspectives. I think it may count, but it shouldn't have to count. Because the idea of snacks was basically to handle those kids who are hungry. So in our facility, we have really, really robust hot meals for breakfast. Most kids don't eat it because they're just not hungry. They'd rather sleep. And I'm not going to force a kid to eat breakfast. And so when a snack comes at 10 in the morning, that's the first time some of these kids are eating. So sometimes, a snack of just an apple, and some peanut butter, and that's usually we do a protein and a fruit. and then they're not getting something till lunch, so I think we have to keep in mind too that kids are not eating a lot of kids are probably not eating breakfast. And, I've had the supervising cook come over because we get it from the honor farm, and my nurse, and she said, can we move calories from morning till a snack or to lunch? Because, if a kid skips a meal, they're also choosing to skip the calories. And then I think that's why some of our kids get hungry, is because they're skipping breakfast. So I don't think it has to count, but I think it may count.
Thanks, Marguerite. And for that recommendation to include snacks as a subsection here, do you have a sense of what kind of language you would like to see in the text?
I'm not a wordsmither. I believe BSCC, if we say, if adding a snack, because we say, snacks between breakfast and lunch, if we want to add in the snack between dinner, lunch and dinner, or between meals, be very broad about it. But I trust that if we come up with the ideas of what we want to see in that section, and then allow BSCC to take the time to wordsmith it. I think if we tried to do that here, we're gonna use up all our time.
Agreed. Amanda, can we make note of that? Oh, I see other hands up.
What's the note? What you want drafting, or when you say that a separate section for snacks, I guess I'd need to know what sort of information goes into that section that's not already covered in either 1460 or 1461, because it does already say snacks shall be provided to all youth between 2 to 4 hours after breakfast, lunch, and dinner meal is served. That was a revision made during the last meeting. And we also made the revision in section 1460 that snacks shall be served separately from meals. So we know that they need to be served separately. I believe this discussion is just about whether or not those calories need to be counted towards their daily totals. So are you saying the separate section needs to be specific to the calories counting towards daily totals?
Based on what I understood from the previous comments, I think there is interest in having snacks to be defined under 1461, and what we would like to include, what we'd like to accept as what a snack would be. But Marguerite, if I've misunderstood, please let me know.
Yeah, no, I see in 1460 how we have that, and maybe we just be a little bit more expansive. I know gentleman from Fly said, differentiating between snacks, food, and meals. It's food, but how do we be, maybe when possible, and putting that in 1460, when possible, additional snacks will be made available. Like it could be something small. It could be, some sort of nutritional bar. It could be fruit. It could be a cheese stick. So now I may be going backwards and just causing a whole another.
No, I think we're
pain in
just.
the ass.
I don't know if now it seems like we're talking about the availability of snacks versus whether those snack calories count.
Yeah.
Whether it can or can't be included. And it seems like may be included is still sufficient, because it sounds like there's half of the spectrum where they're counting the snack calories and there's some who aren't. But I'm not necessarily sure there's an issue there that we're trying to solve.
Yeah, I think just may be included in the total calories, but they don't have to be.
So the snacks may be included as part of the minimum diet is still.
That's perfect. Good.
Okay.
I think Meredith and I both got what we wanted.
Great. Johnny?
The only comment I wanted to add is that we be specific in putting that a snack may contain or a whole grain, because it does help when menu planning, because we need 42 for the week. 42 whole grains. So that's what we do is we have a AM and a mid-morning snack, excuse me, and after school snack. So we're able to do the whole grain and fulfill the requirement that way. And we can also put down that it can be a fruit. So I understand that cheese may be a cheese stick may be a suggestion, but I think if we can just give small examples focusing on the whole grain and the fruit being the snack, opposed to just the cheese, because that's not going to fulfill our requirement for the whole grains or the fruit. But a cheese is just going to be a part of an extra dairy, but not really counted.
Thanks, Johnny. So I also kind of want to revisit my comment previously about including a snack subsection. I think it would be appropriate to help define that and capture what Johnny just mentioned here. And if it is appropriate to include after E, after the grain group.
I think it's already explained in the definition up on top. I don't know if we need to have another section.
I was
I-
copying that over just so that it was available to everyone. This is
Okay.
how it's defined in section 1302 currently. It doesn't call out any of these particular groups. So if we're going to call out a grain or one of the other ones, is it necessary, or does this capture potentially any group?
I think, again, it's getting into the weeds too much because I think it's going to be the opinion of who's preparing those meals. So if Johnny has a way he wants to do it, I know when I've talked to my nurses, because I want their opinion about some things, they're like, we want to see more protein at an early morning snack because it's something that's going to actually help sustain a kid's belly and feel full, as opposed to carbohydrates, which are going to be more empty sugars. And so, I think, again, it's getting too much in the weeds. If we say this is what's, and some examples, then leave it to the people who are actually doing the meal planning so they have some flexibility. I think the goal is we want the kids to have some food available to eat. And we want it to be healthy. So how we plan that healthiness, because I've got my ideas about what is healthy. Other people have their ideas what's healthy, and so I think we just need to be broad and let each individual facility kind of how they plan that.
Thanks, Marguerite. Meredith?
One question I have is whether folks feel differently between essentially active snack time as opposed to a passive snack. I think I'm curious how facilities do their snack times. And I guess what I'm thinking of is I love allowing a facility the flexibility to make passive snacks. What I mean by that is essentially it's available should you choose to go and get it. That seems like a really good way to address the hunger needs. And I'm wondering how that, making sure facilities can have the ability to sort of just make stuff available, and that maybe being separate from a more active snack time. Marguerite, I'm curious, if those snacks that you were describing after the breakfast time, are those passed out one by one? How does that work? Just making sure that the facilities can have the flexibility to do the passive snacks, but realizing that becomes, because it's passive, it's not like it's necessarily being offered individually. So then maybe it's not as appropriate for a passive snack to be considered part of the serving, since it's not individually offered to each youth. But just trying to differentiate maybe between the types of the ways that food are presented to youth. We
actually have kind of snack time, which is usually a couple hours after lunch, and then it's usually 3 hours, between about 2 hours after lunch and then 3 hours before dinner. And the reason is we have to have some operational control of what's going on, because if you have a freedom of sometimes, I mean, kids have some control issues around food in our experience. And so taking of other kids' food has happened. And then using food inappropriately, that's just the reality sometimes of a facility. And so we have a specific snack time where kids are, our camp program is offered because it is a camp program, they're here longer and we have the flexibility to do that. They're offered a large variety, so they can choose like kind of some different categories so that they're not just all eating, hot Takis. And then our detention youth, which is a very small population, they're actually like, here's, snacks at 2:00. And we do snacks 3 times a day in between each meal. But they are prescribed, and here's your snack. And then we have commissary where kids, off their positive behavior, they don't get things taken away from them. I know that's a concern, but they can twice a week, they can use their scans for positive behavior to buy additional items that are not included in the daily calories. So, and we don't substitute those. So that's kind of how we do things.
Marguerite, Helen?
So pertaining to snacks, I tend to agree with Marguerite's thoughts that we probably don't need to a separate section to specify what dictates a snack, because I think that should be left up to the facilities. Just as Marguerite mentioned that in her facilities, the kids tend to not eat breakfast. And so they might need a larger midday snack, or between breakfast and lunch, they need a larger snack. But there are other facilities, maybe there's a high percentage of participation for breakfast, so they would not need as high of a snack. So I think it should be left up to the facility to determine, as long as their meals and their snacks are all counted toward the minimum diet of that day. I think that's sufficient. I know for our facility, like, we provide snacks and that's counted toward the minimum diet. However, each unit sometimes will make their own snacks, depending on whether there's good behavior or something, or an event that's happening. They'll make snacks for the kids and they just help themselves. Those then does not get counted toward the minimum diet for the day. So that's kind of how we handle it. But if it's a set snack, then I think it should be counted.
Thank you, Helen. Okay, so it seems like the language that we have around snacks is good. So then going back to the fruit group, we've heard some comments about the added examples, which is included on the second sentence here. In order to then, like, not be so in the weeds, I'd like to make a recommendation where the second sentence starts off with saying, 1 serving is equivalent to 1 cup of fresh fruit, or a half or quarter cup of dried fruit. And Helen, do you know off the top of your head, is it a quarter cup is a standard serving of dried fruit?
It's a half a
different
cup.
numbers. Oh, okay.
It used to be a quarter cup was a serving, but since they increased the serving size to 1 cup from half a cup, so the dried fruit also went up. So it's half a cup now.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, Amanda, can we strike out that 4 that's there?
It is struck out. That's why it's hard to see. The strikeout is
Oh.
right where that 4 crosses over. So I'll just strike out the whole thing and replace it with 1/2. So maybe it's a little easier to see that way.
Okay, sorry about that.
No,
Thank
no, all
you.
good. All good.
Okay. And then, so then by therefore saying 1 serving is equivalent to 1 cup of fresh fruit, can we then are we okay with striking out those added examples? Okay, great. And I think that's similar to our conversation about the protein serving, how like the experts can do their outside research if they need to.
So I want to make sure I got that right. So starting here, 1 serving equals 1 cup
Fresh fruit?
fresh fruit?
Mhm.
And then you wanted to strike everything until half a cup?
Yes, half cup dried fruit.
Is it okay for me to make that change now?
Yeah. And I also want to, I'm sorry, I want to take back the fresh fruit option because, well, should it, oh, okay, I want to ask the group, should we then list out specifically fresh, frozen, or canned? Do we need to say that? Because we're also specifying for the dried serving size. Carrie, I see your hand up.
Yes, because it will matter if it's fresh, some may read that very literal and limit them to what fresh fruit they can get in season. So by adding canned or frozen, that helps expand what they're able to put on the menu and get more variety.
Thanks, Carrie. Any other comments? Okay.
So was it does it still fall under 1 cup? The canned or? So where are you saying that here, 1 cup fresh, canned or frozen fruit? Is that right? Okay, want to make sure I heard that right. Thank you.
Helen?
Hyla, did you want it to say 1 serving is equivalent rather than equals?
Yes, is equivalent.
Okay.
Thank you.
You want that change up in vegetables too, because we used equals up there.
Yeah. Thank you, Amanda. Thanks. And Meredith?
I just wanted to ask, if it's also helpful to like, or equivalent whole fruit. I don't know if this was because you're measuring it in cup. Do folks feel like that suggests then like fruit has to be cut up and like into like a volume size? I think that what all this text was intending to do was not like give examples, but give like size equivalents. So like where we have like 1 cup of fresh canned or frozen fruit or equivalent whole fruit. I don't know, something to suggest that you can also serve whole fruit. It doesn't have to be measured out. Or do you think that that's like implied?
Carrie?
By saying 1 serving is equivalent to 1 cup of fruit, that is implied. So in the industry, then an apple, it's an 88 count apple or 68 count apple. So we know what size is equivalent. And if they would wonder, then what it is so they don't count an apple. So it's like the core and the seeds and the inedible part, but it's 1 cup equivalent of fruit. And that is implied by saying it's 1 cup. That's why there's the cup measurement. So I don't know if that helps answer that question.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Carrie. Okay, are there any other comments on this first half of the fruit group paragraph? Okay, now let's move on to the last part where we pick up at 1 serving per day may be substitute for an additional serving from the vegetable group. At least 1 serving per day must be a fresh fruit. Recommend only fresh or frozen fruits are served. And then the comment that I want to direct our attention to here about not allowing juice to count as a fruit. Is there any suggested language to include into this paragraph?
We struck juice from higher up where Laura intended that to be struck, but I do believe I remember discussion earlier that canned fruits being in 100% fruit juice or water isn't always possible, so I thought there was a recommendation to strike that last sentence earlier.
Agreed. So I just want to ask the group real quick before we go on to the canned fruit section. Would it be necessary to explicitly say that we are not to count juice as a fruit serving? Is it needed? Jordan, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I think that'd be nice to specifically say like don't count juice, you know what I mean? So that way there's no confusion.
And just to follow up, Jordan, is there an area where you think that would tie in nicely with the text that's already there?
I guess I'm just right at the end. You could just add it to. Yeah.
I need some help with these words. Sounds a little
100% juice.
I thought we were okay with 100% fruit juice, or is 100% juice different?
Well, like I'm
And
sorry, like the little juice boxes, you know what I mean, that you get, those don't count as like for the standard intake.
What do we call?
Yeah, and I think we're trying to eliminate juice from being a part of the fruit serving in general. So I
Right.
think what you're saying, Jordan, is to include it at the end of this paragraph and just, using some of Laura's language here, juice should not be counted as a fruit serving.
Right.
Okay. Can we see what that looks like, Amanda?
Should or shall?
Shall not be included as a fruit serving.
There we go.
Oh, thanks. Helen?
Yeah, I hate to be the voice on the other end. USDA does allow 100% juice to be counted. However, they limit the number of times juice can be served. Can we be consistent with that? And maybe juice can only be counted like once per day? Because I know a lot of facilities do offer juice with breakfast for the kids. And since we are increasing the requirements for fruits and vegetable, it may make it that much harder for them to comply.
Thanks, Helen. Carrie?
I agree with Helen on that. Limiting it would be good. The kids love juice. And it's as long as it's 100% juice, we only serve it about 2-3 times a week. But it's like a popular item for them. So it would be helpful if they were able to still get that. But again, we do limit it because we do know it's very little nutritional value, like the whole fruits. But limiting it would help bring that balance a little back so they could still enjoy juice, because by taking juice completely out, some facilities may not serve juice to kids at all. And that's one of their favorite, at least in my feedback, that's one of their favorite things, to be able to get juice, because they usually just get milk and then juice. So to be able to have that count would be helpful, but limited.
Thank you, Carrie. Jordan?
So what if we put like juice shall be served, but limited and not included in the fruit serving? Should be served. So that way, you know what I mean?
Yeah, can you say that again?
So juice shall be served, but not included as a fruit serving or their daily fruit serving. Yeah. Is that a little better or?
Okay, thanks, Jordan. Yeah, I want to hear also, Johnny, you had some comments?
At this point, I think we should just go ahead and put back 6 ounces of 100% juice. It sounds like we're moving towards that it being an option. So I'm for just leaving back that language where it's striked out 6 ounces of 100% juice, because that's basically what Carrie and Helen was mentioning. So that would alleviate all the verbiage that's not necessary at this point.
Thanks, Johnny. Carrie?
Or to put 100% fruit juice may be served but not counted more than 2 times per week towards the fruit category. That way it's definitely, we want to keep it to 100% fruit juice, because if we leave it at just juice, then you get those things full of sugar and stuff that's not good for them. We want 100% fruit juice in there for sure, and then indicate the limit too. So it doesn't go on the other spectrum of nothing but juice.
Thanks, Carrie. Helen?
Yeah, I was thinking maybe we can put no more than 2 servings of 100% juice shall be provided per week.
Thanks, Helen. Meredith?
Helen, I like that language. I'm just wondering though, did you mean no more than 2 servings should count as the fruit group? I guess I'm like, given, I can't remember Carrie's comment that the youth love the juice. Like, it's a really nice offering that it can be offered more times, but it can't be the serving more than 2 times a week. Is that, I guess I'm just trying to, going back to like flexibility and giving you things that are, tasty and more fun than water or milk. But we don't want it to replace the fruit servings. So I'm trying to see if because the way that language is looking, it sounds like now you can only get juice twice per week. If that makes sense. Carrie, I'm curious, like would that change things for how you all do it?
Carrie?
Yeah, if we combine those 2 middle statements in your typing, Amanda, that it's 100% fruit juice may be served, but no more than 2 servings shall be counted towards the fruit group category. It combines the best of both worlds. So it shows, okay, we can serve it more than twice, but we can only count it towards fruit twice in a week. And then we could still give them fruit. They'll still get their fruit in other ways, but it leaves us open to be able to still give them their juice as extras the rest of the week.
I don't think I caught the very last part of that. 100% fruit juice may be served, but no more than 2 servings shall be served per week, or did you change the end of that there?
Shall be counted towards the fruit group.
Is it? Oh yeah, per week. Great, thank you.
Thanks, Carrie. Okay, based on that middle sentence there in the comment, does anyone have any other comments that is not in line with this sentence here? Okay. Can we see that in the text, Amanda? Thank you. And I believe Johnny also made a recommendation to bring back the strikeout of the 6 ounces of 100% juice.
I'll put that back in and just add commas between the 1 cup, 6 ounces of juice, or
Yeah.
half cup dried fruit. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. And then now working just a little bit backwards from that juice sentence that we included, there was conversation about allowing for light syrup for the canned and, well, sorry, where am I? For the canned fruit. So Amanda, would it be possible to add in the light syrup? So it must be in 100% fruit juice, comma, light syrup or water.
Is it necessary to keep the sentence if we're allowing all of those options? I mean, would it come in something other than fruit juice, water, or syrup? And
I
if
think,
not-
oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, and if not, would we just take the sentence out completely? Because it seems like this sentence was in there to limit it, but if we're not trying to limit it,
Yeah, I think there are options for regular syrup with fruit. So I think that the light syrup is a better indicator of like what food service is able to serve.
so fruit juice,
Light syrup. Right. And so now how it's written, does it capture the thoughts from earlier around the canned fruit? I see nods. Okay, great. All right. So just another review of this paragraph here. With the way that it's currently written, does anyone have any other recommendations that are not reflected here? Or are there any areas where maybe we're not in agreement? I don't see hands, so I'm going to take that as a good sign. And let's go ahead and move to the next section.
Kylie,
Okay.
we have about 11 minutes before 12.
Yep, thank you so much. Okay, so given that we only have 11 minutes, let's still read through this paragraph here and maybe about 5 till we'll just pause where we're at and then we'll review the previous sections that we went over. That way we can end on time for lunch. Okay, so section E, grain group, includes breads, rolls, pancakes, sweet rolls, ready to eat or cooked cereals, cornbread, pasta, rice, tortillas, etc., and any food item containing whole or enriched grains. And this is newly added text here. The daily requirement shall be at least 10-ounce equivalents per day. 1 ounce equivalent is 1 slice of bread, 1 cup of ready-to-eat cereal, half cup of cooked rice, cooked pasta, or cooked cereal. At least half of the daily servings from this group must be whole grain. A product must have a whole grain first on its ingredient list to be considered whole grain. The daily requirement for use shall be a minimum of 6 servings or 42 servings per week. Okay. Any initial comments from the group? Yes, Helen.
Yeah, because initially the requirements were 6 servings and half of those need to be whole grains. Now, with the new recommendation of at least 10-ounce equivalents, and then you still have the daily requirement for you shall be a minimum of 6 servings. I find that confusing. Because somebody reading that and trying to figure out what the requirements are, they're going to say, well, is it 10 servings or is it 6 servings? What is the minimum? So if we decide we're going to go with the 10-ounce equivalent, then I think we should remove the last sentence. And 10 is a lot, just so you know, because keeping in mind that with National School Lunch and School Breakfast Program, you can only have a maximum of between 2 to 4 ounce equivalents from both meals. So if we're doing 10, that means you've got 6 ounce equivalents that you need to put into dinner or close to it. So just keep that in mind. It's just a comment.
Thanks, Helen. So then to kind of summarize, you are recommending that we strike out the daily requirement for youth, etc. That is from the original regulation text, right? Okay, great. Are there any thoughts against that recommendation or have another type of recommendation? Okay. Amanda, can we see that line struck out?
This line I have highlighted, correct?
Yes, thank you. Yes, Johnny.
I think we still need to know it's 42 servings per week. Did I not catch that somewhere, or is there still not, is it, because that's something that where menu analysis from the dietitian, it's faster and easier to have that 42 grams, I'm sorry, 42 servings identified. Because otherwise I don't think it's notated. Or actually I'm not familiar with the DJA or whatever it states anywhere else. Does anybody have any comments on what I mentioned? Because that 42 is one of my markers for my dietitian.
Carrie?
Maybe to be more consistent, since we're listing the 10-ounce equivalent, instead of doing 42 servings, put in maybe how many ounces per week. That way you still have that weekly marker, but it's also consistent with the verbiage of the 10-ounce equivalent. It's just an idea.
Helen?
Yeah, I agree with Carrie. If we're gonna be consistent, then we should also put in the amount per week. But it's not gonna be 42 servings per week. It will end up being 70.
Is that 70 servings or 70-ounce equivalents? Is the correct way to say that?
It would be 70-ounce equivalents, but really it translates to 70 servings.
Thanks, Helen. All right. And so now, and I hear your point, Johnny, about the dietitian looking for that 42 number. But as we are revising our nutrition regulations, that number will essentially change, right? And so then the processes will also have to conform as well. Okay. Are there any other comments on this section? No? Okay. So it seems like we reached consensus. That was great. Thank you all. Okay, so at this point, I don't necessarily want to jump into the next area. Amanda, would it be possible to go back to 1461 and just review what we've accepted so far today before we break for lunch? Thank you. Okay, great. So we, on this call just now, we have addressed the area where the vegetarian and vegan diets must conform to the nutritional standards. And we've added, well, actually separated that religious diets will conform to these nutrition standards as close as possible. We've then gone down into the protein group, and the daily minimum protein requirements are 52 grams per day, and then it's broken down by age group. We also better define what protein sources are, the inclusion, and we accepted the tofu seeds as part of that. And then also kept in the language about legumes, but just tightened that up a bit to make sure that the youth are getting legumes 3 days a week. Okay, and then we did eliminate evaporated or dry milk as an option for the dairy group, and also kept the language about reducing it to 3 servings, which was originally 4, and then also including a line about the milk substitutes. For the vegetable group, we did talk about the equivalent of 1 cup. We accepted that. Also, the added language about the different colored vegetables, we decided to keep in this text here. And then we also eliminated the sodium restrictions because of the elimination of the sodium cap. And then for fruits, we talked about the equivalent of 1 cup fresh, canned, or frozen, or a ½ cup of dried fruit. We also accepted the 1 serving per day can be an additional serving from the vegetable group. One must be a fresh fruit. And the recommendation for only fresh or frozen fruits and canned and frozen fruit with no added sweeteners. Canned fruit must be in 100% fruit juice, light syrup, or water. And the inclusion of 100% fruit juice may be served, but no more than 2 servings shall be counted toward the fruit group per week. I did want to ask, sorry, before we move on, is there this line where it says required canned and frozen fruit with no added sweeteners? Is this now contradictory to our inclusion here of the light syrup under canned fruit? Because that is technically an added sweetener? Yes, Carrie.
It's a repetitive for canned, but you definitely want to keep it, maybe just strike canned and just put frozen fruit with no added sweeteners, because they do sell frozen fruit with sweeteners. And so we want to stay away from that. So maybe just be more specific about the frozen fruit.
Thanks, Carrie. And Amanda, can we strike out require canned and?
Keep require frozen fruit with no added sweeteners.
Or maybe just start the sentence with frozen fruit shall not have added sweeteners. Thank you. Okay. Is that okay for the rest of the group? All right, thank you. Okay, and then under grains, we did include the 70-ounce equivalent per week. We kept the examples here. We have at least half of the daily servings from this group must be whole grain, and the definition of what a whole grain is, which would include being first on the ingredient list. Okay, thank you everyone for a great first part of our work group meeting. We will break for lunch. Oh, sorry, Shay, is this you? Don't let me take over your job.
No, this
Sorry.
is perfect. You already just nailed it. It is actually 11:59 and 52 seconds. So outstanding. We'll be back at 1.
All right. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you soon. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. Hope everyone was able to eat a good meal. Maybe have some whole grains. Right? The goal. All right, while we're waiting for folks to join, guess what we can do, if anyone wants to share like what they had for lunch, as we kind of wait.
I had 2 cheese sticks and these dehydrated apples, actually. It was a very light lunch. It was not because of our comment, but it just happened to be something fast and I can grab. So,
Was it a half cup of those dehydrated apples?
it says it's equivalent to only a half. So it's only a little small bag. So it didn't count for the full cup.
Nice.
So it's only a quarter cup then, Johnny, is that right?
I'm out
I
of
have
compliance.
salad.
Uh,
It looks like we lost Jordan along the way.
He's on
Do we know
our
if he's
attendee side. We're trying to promote him, so I don't know if he maybe stepped away from his phone. We see him as our attendee side though.
okay? Okay. Should I just go ahead and wait then until we get that worked out?
He might have stepped away from his computer at the moment or can't see the prompt. Jordan, if you are able to see or hear us, he sent you a request to promote you to a panelist. I just got a message back that you declined it, so we're gonna try again. Just so you're able to join discussion. He did also inform me earlier that he would have to leave early from this meeting, so maybe there's something that he's handling to do with that, but we'll keep an eye out for him and keep trying to promote him back into the discussion if you want to go ahead.
Okay, great. Thanks, Amanda. And yeah, I hope, Jordan, you can join us when you're ready, or if you would like to continue to join us. Okay. Amanda, would you be able to share the text, please? Thank you. Okay, so just gonna dive right into it. We will now look at the calorie section. So based on our previous work group meeting, we did raise the calorie count to 3,200 as the highest part of that range. And there's also text here that includes calorie modifications may occur as collaboratively determined by the facility manager, dietitian, food service manager, physician, and youth when feasible. Are you still okay with that language? Okay, great. And then, excuse me, the section here about pregnant youth shall be provided a diet where the diet is approved by a doctor in accordance with Penal Code Section 6030 and a supplemental snack if medically indicated. Now, we talked about this a little bit. Helen, you did make a comment about pregnant and lactating youth. Is that something where you'd like to add the language here for those who are lactating as well?
I'm not sure we need to specifically add the dairy requirement, because the wording kind of already says it has to be an approved diet. So we can probably assume that a pregnancy diet or a lactating diet will contain 4 servings of milk in itself. So hopefully that would just cover it.
Okay, and is there a need in this section here to include lactating youth?
That's probably a good idea.
Okay. Does anyone oppose that added language? No, okay. Can we see that included, Amanda? Thank you. Okay. If there are no other comments on this section, we can go ahead and move on to saturated fat. So the new edits include where it says, in keeping with chronic disease prevention goals, total dietary saturated fat shall not exceed 10% of total calories on a daily basis. This was a recommendation made by Laura, and then also struck out the last line there where it talks about facility dietitians, and then references back to the 2015, 2020 DGAs. Are there comments around this saturated fat section? Yes, Helen.
I think it's a good idea to change it to daily. However, then you're taking away some of that flexibility in menu planning. Because sometimes I know there are meals that are just higher in saturated fat, but then you compensate with other meals. And as long as the weekly average still comes out to below 10%, that has been the practice. I don't know how other group members feel about that, because by keeping it weekly, you're allowing a little bit more flexibility within the facility. It's never going to go above 10% on a weekly basis anyway. But it does restrict them a lot on menu planning when you put it on a daily.
Carrie?
I agree. Being daily, it is restrictive. And I do the same thing when the menu planning is to compensate for one that's a little higher to be under. And my weekly average is always well under 10%, but there are specific days where that might be a little higher. Of course, that's their favorite foods. So it allows me to get some really good meals that they like. And so by doing daily, that's gonna be a hindrance.
Okay, thanks, Carrie. So I'm hearing that we want to go back to the original language for weekly basis then. Okay, I'm seeing head nods. Okay, and then the line where we've struck out the facility dietitians, et cetera, are we okay with leaving that out? Okay, great. I see head nods. All right, then jumping to H, added sugars. This was recommended by Laura, and it says added sugars in keeping with chronic disease prevention goals in the 2020 to 2020. Oh, that's a typo there. 2025, it should say. DGAs, total calories from added sugars shall not exceed 10% of total calories on a daily basis. Any objections to this edit? Yeah, Helen.
To be consistent, should we also put that as a weekly basis?
Yeah, I see head nods. Okay. No other comments on this section? All right, great. And then to I, herbs, spices, and Laura added, and other condiments may be used to improve the taste and eye appeal of food served. Yeah, Johnny.
I know that a lot of condiments have a lot of sodium. Um, I'm a little cautious about that condiment word because I get the whole point of it to enhance the meal, but this may put us out of compliance if we're serving hot sauce at all three meals, and then we're having so several other, even ketchup. So I'm not sure if the group agrees, but I think we can be specific with like maybe stating lower sodium condiments. I don't know. But the dietitian that's reviewing the menus does have the, of course, they should be approving or disallowing condiments when suggested by me, for example. They're the ones that actually finalize the menu, but putting it on here kind of makes it sound like it's okay to have it even without the menu being approved. So I don't know. What does the group think?
Carrie.
I think by adding condiments, it might be a problem with people not working on improving the quality of the food and the actual taste of the food. My concern is they would say, oh, here's a ketchup packet, here's a Tapatio packet or a hot sauce packet, it'll be fine now. And that's not helping them focus on just improving the quality of the food, which is the main concern. It would allow the people to just sort of cover over their food with a condiment, and that's not the intention. The food needs to be good, and the keeping it to herbs and spices will help keep that focus on the food actually being really tasty.
Great points, Carrie. Thank you. Marguerite?
I think I understand that, and Carrie, I wish we all had a Carrie in our kitchens. You too, Johnny. And I think we also understand too is what do kids do at home? You know, I think a lot of advocates and people say, you know, what do kids have at home? And you know, they do have the tapatio, they do have, you know, dressings, they have these things. I know, you know, because we're worried about calories and sodium, our kids, they won't give our kids from when we get our meals, because the sandwich, they're not giving mayonnaise packets. And it's like, I want kids to have a package of mayonnaise to put on their sandwich. It shouldn't just be a mustard, you know. So I hear the other side too, you know, because again, like ketchup's really high in sugar, and the sodium. I just don't know from, you know, how much control we say, yeah, they should be doing a better job at, you know, the you know, the kind of the love and the heart that's getting put into making this food. It's really probably not happening when we get meals from outside the facility. They just don't have the ability to do that. And so, you know, I don't want to take condiments away from kids. I do like it because they like them, and it does feel like home. They have the ability to do that at home. And it's also culturally responsive too, because, you know, what I would put on food at my house is going to be different from, you know, a Latino kid. And so I want to be sensitive to that and having those things available. That's all.
Thanks, Marguerite. Yeah, thank you for that. So based on some of the comments that were just made, it sounds like we do want condiments to be available, but within limitations. And so with Johnny's comment about, you know, you would always have to get approval from a dietitian anyways, would it be most appropriate then to include after and a dietitian approved condiments may be used?
You know, I don't think it needs to be specific on there. What I was indicating is we got to be careful with even listing these condiments, because if I didn't know, if I was just new in my position and I'm expecting my dietitian to approve my menus, and then I look at Title 15, I'm almost going to say that if I didn't have the experience and knowledge, that I'm going to be like, okay, I guess the condiments are not accounted for. The menus, I mean, I used to have menus, you know, 15 years ago that didn't have condiments. Now we have them because they need to be calculated for many reasons. And so I don't know if this is the right group or right area for this condiment word, because maybe we should put it up where the actual menu planning or menu, even the calorics section up above, you know, to include those words and other condiments, because it is a component. It is a component, a part of the meal that should be calculated within the 25 to 3,200 range. So I'm kind of wary about leaving it just how it is And even putting an RD approval is not necessary here. I think as a whole, the menus are approved by the RD, but if we were to scroll up to the 2,500 to 3,200 and maybe put like some kind of a language where condiments are included, you know, something in there, because that it should be included. Even though it's in this section, I think we're still in the same section. What does the group think about that?
Carrie?
I agree. I mean, I do serve condiments as well. I think condiments do need to be included. I just don't think if it's right there, they might weigh heavier on that, on the taste for the food. So putting it separate, like Johnny said, it would be, I think, more appropriate.
In the calorie section, correct? Okay. Amanda, can we see what that would look like? And Johnny, where in the section would you like to see it placed?
Maybe I misspoke. It wasn't here in this section because I may be getting mixed up because I don't have my screen up for the full uh you know, Article 9, but I'm just trying to look here to see because maybe it's under menu where it states the approved menus. I don't remember what it states. Let me see if I can pull it up real quick because it might not be in this section, but basically, yes, it is the annual review of the dietitian for the menus as a whole. But I don't know if it would fit right there what I was mentioning after all, because it doesn't really specify about the food. It's just saying caloric range. Or we can put down that condiments are included in the calories, but this doesn't sound right. So let me take a look on my end and I'll get back to you guys on that real quick.
Okay, Carrie?
Well, what I was thinking, Johnny, when you said that is right after where it says calories minimum 2,500 not to exceed 3,200 is to put condiments added to menu are to be included in calorie count. Because then it's also right after that is that it's determined by facility manager and dietitian. So it would show that it's included there. That's what I was thinking you were going with.
Yeah, we can put that down and see where it goes, but I'm gonna take a look on my end to see if there's anything out anywhere else that it could state in the Article 9. I mean, yeah, because I can't remember because we're only on this specific spot here. So I'm okay with it for now. Let me just take a look real quick.
Okay, and alternatively, I'm wondering if it could also be added in the second paragraph at the beginning of 1461, where we also talked about snacks may be included as part of the minimum diet. Could we also include snacks and condiments may be included as part of the minimum diet? Helen?
Yeah, I was just going to suggest, what if we left the wording as it is, but add when it complies with other restrictions of the minimum diet. That way it's all covered: calories, sodium, added sugar, saturated fat, everything. So it has to comply with all other aspects of the minimum diet.
That works.
Thank you, Helen. Okay, so as it's written there in section I, are there any other additional comments or other alternative views on this? No. Okay. Oh, great. Okay, so then let's go ahead and continue forward. And now we can pick up where we left off the last time with 1462 medical diets. Okay, so here we do have some edits on the screen where we picked up at prescribed medical diets used by a facility shall be planned, prepared, and served with the consultation of a registered dietitian. Facility manager shall comply with any medical diet prescribed for a youth. Diet orders shall be maintained on file for at least 1 year. The facility manager and responsible physicians shall ensure that the medical diet manual with sample menus for medical diet shall be available in both the medical unit and the food service office for reference and information. A registered dietitian shall review and the responsible physician shall approve the diet manual on an annual basis. Okay, any comments here? Not looking like it. Okay, great. We did have a note of a public comment previously, which was a recommendation to update the text to reflect International Dysphagia Diet Standardization Initiative. Wow, that's a mouthful. Requirements on how food is rated when diets require food to be pureed, minced, soft, bite-sized, etc., to ensure consistency of food for diets because IDDSI is a universal standard. Are there any comments on this public comment? Marguerite.
What is all that? And if it's so specific, are we going to talk about what we give for a kid with diabetes, the kid with cancer? Because I mean, I've had both in here, so I don't know what that is. Does someone know what that is?
Yeah, good point, Marguerite. And Helen.
Yeah, that's the new terminology they use basically for what used to be like a puree diets, mechanical soft diet, chopped diet, basically all the texture modified diets. They're now used more in acute hospital settings, so that they're more specific as to how much the food needs to be modified texturally. My question to the group is, how many of you get a lot of these requirements for texture modification for your use? I don't get too many of them. I mean, I'll get a soft diet occasionally, maybe a mechanical soft if necessary, because they were in a fight and their jaws are wired or something like that, or they've got some dental issues, but it's generally temporary. So from my opinion, I'm not sure we need to go into that much detail for the probation setting. I think for most facility, it's either a soft diet or a mechanical soft diet, and that seems to be adequate. What do all of you feel?
I think if I had this kind of kid in my detention, I would do what I could to get him home. Because it's, this seems like it's a pretty significant medical issue that do we want to, or do they need to be, have they come out of the hospital? And so I would think it would be a short term, like if I have a secure youth track who's coming out, has wisdom teeth removed or something, and for a few days they got to do a soft diet, but I don't think it needs to be all into this. And this just seems more appropriate for like a jail or a prison when you have somebody who's, older, but I don't know if it needs to be this.
Thanks. I see Johnny, your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment. We don't really see too many of these at all on my end. I think we have about 160 youth right now for the 3 facilities. And I probably hear about between the 3 facilities and the pop, maybe 3 every 2 months, 3 months, maybe. It's very uncommon. Like you mentioned about the wisdom teeth, we see that often, wired shut, the jaw wired shut. We have that in the puree diets. It's very hard to come by because the youth will even take on the pain versus taking on the puree diet actually and try to persuade the medical staff to get them off. So yeah, this is not a common in our area.
Thanks, Johnny. Helen?
Yeah, I was gonna address Marguerite's comment about the adult setting. Even in the adult detentions, I don't use that reference because we really don't need it. We have a mechanical soft diet, and that's pretty much it. If they really need it, we do blenderized diet, which is essentially a puree diet if they're at that level. We have the clear liquid, we have a full liquid diet, but even for other inmates that have dental issues, usually the mechanical soft diet is adequate. So I don't think that the population we're dealing with requires that much intensity in breaking down the texture modification.
Thanks, Helen. So I'm hearing that we are not wanting to include this in the standard. Is anyone feeling otherwise? No. Okay, great. So let's go ahead and push forward to 1463 menus. And here we do have an edit. So menus shall be planned at least once a month, 1 month in advance of their use. Menus shall be planned to provide a variety of foods considering the cultural and ethnic makeup of the facility, thus preventing repetitive meals. Menus shall be approved by a registered dietitian before being used. Youth may be included in the meal planning process where practicable. If any meal served varies from the planned menu, the change shall be noted in writing on the menu and/or production worksheet. Menus as planned and including changes shall be retained for 1 year and evaluated by a registered dietitian at least annually. Are there any comments on this and the suggested edit? Yes, Amanda?
I do just want to point out, since Laura wasn't here, she did make additional comments only to this section. So I can share those on screen after discussion, or I can share them now, whichever is preferred. But I do just want to acknowledge that Laura has made recommendations for this section as well.
Thank you. Okay, can you pull those up and then Johnny, your comment?
Yeah, so I've actually received a couple grievances because of how this is written. Youth were stating that we are serving the meals repetitive, and we have a 4-week menu cycle. I think we've had it probably for about at least 15, 16 years now. When I first started, it was a 5-week cycle. But with that being said, I don't know if everybody agrees within the group what the definition of repetitive meals means, because a lot of different agencies may have different menu cycles. And here it just specifies about meals, but I don't think the youth understand that. I think the youth read this as in just the actual components itself. For example, pizza served once every week, is that considered repetitive? I think it's all about whoever is reading or seeing the menu. But I just wanted to throw that out there that I have received grievances that them thinking that our 4-week menu cycle is still repetitive, and it's actually very well put spaced out. It's just some kids don't like nachos 3 times in a month, or pizza 4 times in a month. So I just want to throw it out there.
Thanks, Johnny. And I see that oh, nice. Thanks for the side by side, the top and down. Okay. So I hear the point about like the difference between rotating menus and then repetitive meals. So based on that, Johnny, would you suggest clarifying a little bit around repetitive meals, like maybe repetitive meals in a week or something where it can be more of like a definite time frame?
Well, I was actually just reading Laura's comment real quick before I answer, because um she's that we're not being repetitive, separate, encourage. Let me see. Okay. Okay, I thought she was trying to say what I'm saying, but no, that's a little bit different. That's more about the type of meals that we're serving. Well, what I was mentioning is if we were to basically state that maybe somewhere meals, meal meals served in a week shall not be served maybe twice in a week. I don't know, something along, because it's kind of hard to say, because a hamburger and a cheeseburger, right? I've seen this on the menu where some kids like hamburgers, right? But then others are like, we're getting too many hamburgers, plus we got programming hamburgers for the weekend. It's too much hamburgers. So I don't want to you know, this is going to affect a lot of agencies if whatever we write here. So I was only making the comment of if there's anybody in agreement of being specific of what the repetitive meals looks like. Otherwise, I would just say, let's just leave it alone. I was just making a comment of what the grievances were.
Thanks, Johnny. And that's a great perspective to bring in. Helen?
Yeah, I kind of like Laura's change to avoid rather than preventing repetitive meals. I think, Johnny, no matter what you do, you're going to get those grievances. They're just going to keep coming. If it's, like you said, it's just personal preference, For those that like hamburger, they're happy to have it every day. For those that don't, they'll be upset if it's served every week. So, it would be difficult to word it here so that it will protect everybody or cover all aspects. So maybe just changing it to avoid rather than prevent might help. I don't know.
Thanks, Helen. Meredith?
I agree with Helen. I like Laura's change. I also like Laura's suggestion about language that would sort of give, spark the variability, like using in season or locally available foods to help, make things less repetitive over the course of a year. So I'd be interested to see, what that could look like in text. One issue I want to bring up that comes up for the most for me here, but maybe in a few other places. And I don't think our work group has really spent much time talking about the youth who are in secure youth treatment facilities. I think it's not so clear to me where we have a separate subcommittee dealing with the SYTF facilities. But our materials also seem to indicate that they've considered these sections and have no recommendations. I'm not sure that's true. We heard in a different work group yesterday from a member who said that she doesn't think that the subcommittee has exactly said they don't have recommendations, more so that they haven't had the opportunity to make them. All of that to say, I would have this issue of repetitive. I think I agree with Johnny that it's not self-explanatory what that means exactly. And I have the greatest concern when it comes to a youth who's in a facility for years, and these secure youth treatment facilities, youth can be there up to 7 years. That's a long time to be getting the same monthly menu. So I would like us at a minimum to flag to the SYTF work group that this might be something that they should spend some careful attention to and think about for a youth who's going to be spending years in a facility, what menu planning can look like. And for us, for our task for the moment, I would really like to see that sentence of youth may be included to youth should be included where practicable. I mean, I'm going to guess that most facility managers have always known that they could ask youth if they wanted to. So I don't really see a value in saying they may be included where practical. I think if we're going to make a statement about including youth, it should be a little bit more, encouraging of including youth in meal planning. So that would be my last suggestion.
Thanks, Meredith. Johnny?
Yes, I'm glad you brought that up, Meredith. So we automatically just because we want to. We actually have every 6 months menu changes, and we have a youth survey every 6 months for youth changes suggestions that are reviewed by the dietitian. So youth may be included. We actually, I think we should consider youth surveys being a part of this section here, as it shall be done. Because then that will cover them being included, because that's what we've been doing for several years now, and it's been successful. I mentioned the hamburgers and pizza and nachos earlier. So every 6 months, we're getting these detailed surveys out, and I can provide the group with a copy of what mine looks like, so you guys can see. And it's called a summer and a winter menu. So we are changing within the every 6 months, and the youth are involved by their survey. Now, if we're looking to be more specific about what menu planning is in depth, I think that I'm a stay away from that piece, but I'm okay with the surveys, because it does delay the process of how the menus are implemented, the dietitian approval, the back and forth, the agreement. So it does get kind of chaotic when it comes to planning with youth involved. But if we have a youth survey and we have them their suggestions implemented, if applicable, according to the dietitian, then they are creating menus partially. So that's what I wanted to share. Thank you.
Thanks, Johnny. Marguerite?
I think ideally, we could get youth to be included in meal planning. I think the idea for people who have, facilities right on their campuses or in their facilities, a kitchen. For those that do not, it's really difficult. Especially also having it different for secure track for some facilities, because a lot of facilities, it's not this like secure track facility where it's separated from your detention youth. There's a lot of, because they're smaller with such a small population, they don't have the ability to completely separate these kids. So, they may wear different clothes, or they may do some different programming, but there's, especially with your contracts with your county office of education, if you don't have enough kids, you can't have a separate classroom. And so the same idea with food too, to have different food for them is really challenging, especially if you're contracting outside of your facility for your menus. I think what we did kind of alongside with Johnny is that we did a focus group of our secure track, and which we have 4, which is almost probably a fourth of our population right now. And then our camp program. And so we got those ideas from them. And then I took that information and that I received from these focus groups that with the kids, and made some changes that we had the ability to do with our outside provider. But it was very limited. And it was also, when I'm making these changes, I'm maybe telling on myself, but it could be the fact that we might be going over caloric intake too. But the kids are happy, so I'm good with that. But I think it's just, we can't have these things that are just going to be really difficult operationally for smaller counties to be able to implement.
Thanks, Marguerite. So what I'm hearing as a theme is that youth input is important in regards to meal planning, and that's also a practice that is being done currently. So back to strengthening the language that we see on the screen, striking out may, but to include shall. So to make this a little bit stronger, or to make it stronger, actually.
I think shall's too strong. Should might be, but shall's too strong.
Okay.
Because you get their input, but there's no reason to get input if you're not going to do anything with it. And there's some place that you just cannot, it won't change anything, unfortunately. So shall is kind of not, I think you can get input, you can, should, but in certain places, the shall is not going to be possible. You can get it, but it's not going to make a difference. So that's not fair to the kids. So like
Okay.
Meredith is saying, is to put it to should where practical.
Okay. Youth should be included in the meal planning process. Youth input should be included. Okay. And are we still keeping this last part here where practicable? Or are we trying to have a standard where youth input is sought at every facility?
Again, we can do it. I just don't know for some facilities if it's going to change much because of the limitations they may have with their outside vendors.
Meredith?
I just want to say I understand Marguerite's point about, small populations of the SYTF. And maybe coming back to my suggestion that we flag this to the SYTF subcommittee, because maybe then there really needs to be for SYTF facilities some thought gone in, like, okay, this unit is going to go off, off the facility meal for like 1 day a week, something that acknowledges that 7 years is a long time to be eating the same food. And maybe it can be the task of that subcommittee to think about, like, they get a barbecue once a month, something that's different, and can be maybe supported with the realignment funds that specifically target that population, something, but recognizing that generally maybe there has to be alignment with the whole buildings population, and there needs to be some creativity when thinking about a really lengthy commitment in a facility. So if we don't want to like have a separate, have an acknowledgement here, then I think maybe we send it over to that group to spend some more time thinking about that facility type specifically.
Thanks, Meredith. Johnny?
I just wanted to circle back to the group about the comment I made about youth surveys. Maybe we can put on an example here, like i.e., youth surveys, because that is the form of the input, and I don't know any other way. I know that some of the agencies that are outsourcing the meals, they can be simplified by the whoever's taken on that responsibility of creating the menus. If they read the surveys and they make the hash marks and everybody looks like they want chicken tacos instead of beef, it could be as simple as that. And then the outside agency takes on making the change, and the dietitian approves the menu. I think we should put this example here where it says youth input should be included in the menu or the meal planning process where applicable. Example, youth surveys. It's not saying we shall, we must. It's just giving that out there so agencies, when they read this, or even youth, they're like, hey man, that's a good idea. I don't know if anybody else agrees with that, because it kind of does open up a bigger can, and because the youth will see this, but I think that's what we want. We want them to be involved.
Well, and that's something we do with programming. We have a volunteer program manager that comes in, and part of that requirement is that she does, surveys of the youth twice a year to determine what programs they're enjoying doing and what they don't like. And, there's also a requirement that we have evidence-based programming an hour a day. So it's not like we're going to say, oh, okay, guys, you can get rid of the evidence-based programming to just, make phone calls and have free time. So I think there's limitations, but we can still say we want to survey. There will be some things we can't do, but if we can look at what we can, even if it's like have input on what kind of snacks are going to be available in the afternoon, because I know I have the ability to just go buy snacks and have them available. I don't need to have my which is the honor farm, because we get staff meals for the kids. So they are good. And I don't need to go for them for the snacks. I can actually go to a Smart and Final and buy bulk snacks and have them for kids. So that's where it gives us a little bit more control.
Thanks, Marguerite. So from those comments, I did hear including some examples under youth input. I heard surveys, and then a previous comment also mentioned that there are focus groups that are conducted at some of the sites. So yeah, can we see what that inclusion would look like?
Do you want the words for example, or are you looking for like a EG in
EG.
EG's fine, yeah.
Great. Thank you, Amanda. Are we okay with the language that's on the screen? I see nods. Okay, great.
A few
Oh.
people, I know Helen and I were supportive of Laura's edit, because varying the culture and ethic like approach to the food is not like, it's not directly related to prevent, like those are separate things that are both good, preventing repetitive meals. So are we considering Laura's suggestion?
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. I'm looking at too many things on screen. Okay. So the language, are you suggesting, Meredith, then to just take her comment and then plug it in? And also, are you talking about the fresh in season locally available as well?
I think both Helen and I like the avoid as like, and avoid repetitive meals are like, those are two good points that don't need to be connected the way they are currently. I suggested that her language around seasonal was a helpful like factor to, in addition to like cultural, to help increase the variation in the meals. If I didn't hear anyone else take that up.
Okay. So by accepting Laura's recommendation to include and avoid, does that then separate out the culturally representative and menus that are not repetitive, or is there more language that needs to be included?
That looks good to me.
Okay, great. And then the additional language where it says in Laura's comment to encourage using fresh in-season locally available foods. Can we plug that into the paragraph there? Maybe within the second sentence, usually want to write a variety of foods, encouraging using fresh, and then copy that in and see what that maybe looks like.
Sorry, you wanted to see it after variety of foods considering. You want this encouraged to go right after considering or somewhere in between?
Yeah, maybe after a variety of foods, encouraging in season, locally available, etc. And then there, yeah,
Or should it be a comma? Seems like a lot. You list it out.
yeah, it does look like a bit of a run-on. Alternatively, we can end that sentence before, well, after quality, and then maybe just include menu should consider the cultural and ethnic makeup of the facility and avoid repetitive meals.
I almost want to propose flipping that if menus shall consider cultural and ethical makeup of the facility and avoid repetitive meals, but they should encourage use of fresh and seasoned locally available, or you want both of them to be shall? I just heard the word should in there and I'm not sure if I heard it where I thought I
Oh,
did.
sorry, I'm interchanging. Let's see your suggestion. Okay, thank you, Amanda. Johnny, I see your hand up.
Actually, no, this is perfect. I just wanted to make sure, I was looking at Laura's comment and I was overreading it in the sense of in season and locally available, because in my department we don't really purchase locally. We just purchase through our local vendors, and they're not. I don't know if that's the same local, fruits and vegetables, or I don't know what that local means in the sense. That's why I wasn't sure if it was like, a farm. Is that where we're going in with Laura's comment? Like locally fresh fruits, or am I overreading that? So,
Yeah, I think typically local is just about source of origin. So if you're purchasing produce that is, harvested
Okay.
in Riverside area.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. And with the changes that Amanda has made, are there any other comments or other feelings as to whether to accept or reject some of these edits? Helen?
Yeah, just a quick question. Are we editing off? Yeah, that's what I was going to say, because Amanda, you were editing the bottom document first and then switch to the top. So I wasn't sure which is the one we should be looking at.
My apologies. Yes, the top is
Thank you.
Laura's.
No. Thank you. Thank you. You caught on already. Thank you.
Meredith?
I'm just hoping we can add, and maybe it's a comment bubble and it doesn't need to be red lines, but just this point about menus for youth serving SYTF commitments and the like a suggestion that this be addressed by the SYTF subcommittee. It brings up another issue that I was interested in. I think Marguerite, you mentioned commissary in your facility, and I don't believe that there are any regulations in Title 15 around commissary. I am guessing that commissary can often include things aside from food, like personal hygiene items, that kind of thing. So it probably is not unique to this article, but I do think commissary is a way, I know at DJJ, that youth serving long-term commitments could have access to food that's more varied and maybe more interesting and more appealing than what comes through the standard menus. And so I was thinking that in addition to like menu planning and variation in meals, the opportunity to get sort of like additional types of food through a commissary program something that we should maybe flag for the FYTF subcommittee.
I'm not sure that would go into this section because like in our section where we use that whole behavioral management system, it goes in another area of Title 15, you know, with incentives and we use positive behavioral incentives and supports. And so so we have a whole peer leader program. We have if a kid, you know, depending on how they're doing that week, they have a couple opportunities to buy better hygiene products, take longer showers, take, you know, to get those that kind of get the hot Takis. And even to the point where if they're doing so well, they can actually, for a period of time, I will go buy them a fast food meal off site. And let me tell you, fast food's expensive these days. I cannot believe how expensive Jack in the Box is. But I think all that stuff's going to probably be in another section, Meredith, or it should be. And that's probably going to be more in programming and discipline and behavioral management systems. So, because I would not want that commissary to be considered part of our, you know, the total caloric intake.
I completely agree. Yeah, like I said, I agree. It crosses multiple areas. I think though, to the extent we as the nutrition work group are being tasked with, you know, all the types of facilities, knowing that some youth will spend many years and knowing that access to those kinds of treats is like an important part of the food experience. That it's worth at least like flagging that when behavior management or commissary comes up more globally regarding SYTF, that there should be a food component to it. Just out of curiosity, so it sounds like it's a behavior management thing, not something, you know, in a more traditional like correctional setting. It's not like money can be put on someone's books where they can purchase. And so I'm curious, like, do you have additional parameters for parents to bring food, that kind of thing, to just get more access to more variety?
We have it with our SYT kids. We actually have what we'll do, and our camp kids that will do a family meal on occasion, like for special occasions, like their birthday, they graduate, or if they've been in the program for a certain period of time. So that's when the parents can bring food in. They can't bring it in on a regular basis, but they can, you know, like I said, and then they can also just use the points because it's a token economy. And so we never take away the scans they receive. They can only build them up. And so it's we use that incentive, and then twice a week they can turn those in. It's not money. It's just turning in those points basically to buy things. So, you know, a Gatorade might be a certain amount, certain types of chips, like a power bar. And so, but then we also get input from the kids, what they want to see in commissary, because then we can have control of that. And so we get their input as to what they want to see. Headphones for their, you know, for their computer, or kids get, in some part of the building, they also get little AirPods. So, or iPods, not AirPods. Did that answer your question?
Yes. And I mean, I just think it's a really interesting to hear what some facilities are doing. And so if folks don't mind, I would love for this group to just like flag in a comment bubble to that subcommittee to consider when we're talking about meal variety, consider for the SYTF subcommittee
options through commissary, options through family meals, as a way to promote variety for youth spending long-term commitments in a facility.
Thanks, Meredith. Shay?
So highlight, some agencies also have for visiting, they will have vending machines inside the visiting rooms where visitors can provide youth with, items that come out of the vending machine that consist of like sodas or food or different drinks also.
Thanks for that context. Much appreciated. Amanda, would it be possible to also include in that comment bubble some of the suggestions that Meredith just mentioned as well? Thank you so much. Okay. So in summary, SYTF will take another look at this section here, especially as it relates to the youth in those in that track. But as it reads right now, do we have consensus on this language? Okay, great. Let's go ahead and move on then to 1464, food
Sorry,
service.
there was one
Oh.
more comment by Laura. I'm gonna make hers a little wider so you can see it all. Not necessarily a revision. It looks like more of a question, so it may not result in any change, but I just want everyone to be aware of it.
Okay, thank you, Amanda.
Mhm.
Okay, so it looks like there's a bit of, there's a question about whether it's necessary to keep this highlighted section here. Does anyone feel strong? Oh, sorry, Helen.
Yeah, I think the paragraph above where it says menu shall be approved by a registered dietitian before being used is for menus that are being planned in advance. So it's approved by a dietitian, therefore they can be used. But I think this paragraph where it says menus as planned and including changes shall be retained for 1 year, that has to do with record keeping. And then where it says evaluated by a registered dietitian at least annually, pertains more to changes that are made on the menu, whether due to supply chain shortages or something happens, there's facility or electricity outages, whatever, where they have to make temporary changes to the menu. And so the dietitian is not going to have the opportunity to review that or those changes that much in advance. So I think this is what that one is talking about. So then the dietitian needs to review these changes that now have been made, but she needs to do that annually.
That makes sense, Helen. Thank you. And Amanda, would it be helpful to maybe include that response under Laura's comment? In case she happens to catch up on what we've talked about. Thank you. Okay, Johnny?
And maybe we can just add the word include menu changes. So where it says menus as planned and including changes, just put the word menu. Because we have menu modifications, substitutions, whatever the wording may be, because it does kind of sound a little interesting there. And yes, we have to have them reviewed and retained for a year. So that would kind of help the reader what that means.
Sorry, I was just finishing up my sentence when I missed the specific
So
suggestion at the beginning.
yeah, so menus as planned and includes menu substitutions or menu modifications or menu changes. One of those would work. Just because it kind of sounded redundant, as in their approval is needed by the dietitian, but it's actually separate from the menu approval itself. So each month, for example, my sites send to the dietitian once a month, their menu substitutions and modifications. This has nothing to do with medical statements. It's only menu changes, for example, shortages of food and how to substitute. So definitely that is needed there.
Great. Are there any differing thoughts? Okay, great. So we have our notes here, and we've flagged for SYTF to revisit this section. And now we're transferring over the edits. Sorry, just giving y'all a play-by-play. Okay, thank you. And then we can look down to the next section. Great. Moving on to 1464, food service plan. The only edit that was made is to correct the italicized L, which you see here. Otherwise, are there any comments for this section? I did have a question for those who are working at the facilities in food service. Where do temperature logs fit into this section, if at all?
I would put it under food serving because whenever we're serving the food, we have to temp it. So I know it doesn't really fit there, but that's where we have our binders with all the logs for the cooking.
Thanks, Shawnee. Carrie?
Oh, we keep it under documentation and record keeping because we not only have the food temp logs, but we also have the walk-in temp, the dishwasher temp, the hand washing or the wash sink temp. So we have lots of different temps, and that's all under documentation and record keeping for our part.
That's for the better place to put it.
Okay, thank you. So as I understand the comments that were just made, the temps are typically taken after it's cooked, correct? Is that when it's logged? Yes. Oh, yeah, Carrie?
We take it a couple times. If it's cooked ahead of time and hot held, we take the temp when it's cooked, and then right before service, as it's on the line and we're traying it up, we temp it then too. So there's a cooking temperature and there's also the serving temperature as well.
Thank you. And I do remember the previous public comment about some of the youth getting food that was cold. So I'm wondering, are there ways to control for that, especially if the food is outsourced and then being delivered to the youth? Johnny?
Yeah, we had at my older facility that we shut down a very large distance from where the kitchen was from the furthest unit. It was a insulated Cambro food transporting cart, but we couldn't seem to get the food hot enough, keeping it hot enough. Because once we drop off the meals, we don't know how long it takes for the line staff, the officers, to actually issue out the meals. So what we did was we put the hot components only in the actual warmer, because what we were doing in the past was sending the cold apple, the cold salad, on the same tray, right? And the ice bucket with ice and milk. So we actually started separating and putting on top of the actual food cart, the cold components separated, and the hot stayed with the hot in the insulated Cambro. So it's a little more work, but it is hotter food. And that's how we were able to get the meals for the furthest unit in the facility.
Thanks, Johnny. Meredith?
I was just gonna add, I mean, that sounds like a really good strategy, and I wonder if others could. This section is very high level, which, you know, seems appropriate because every facility is so different, but I'm just wondering about like a statement around like serving temperature to address that public comment. I also heard in that public comment from Fly, not just an issue of coldness, but I want to say like freshness. It's like if eggs are made 5 hours before they're served, doesn't matter how hot you get them, they're still going to be gross. So like what I heard in that public comment was more like food being left to, you know, just being such a long period of time when it's transferred from offsite before it's served. And so I don't have a specific language proposal, especially because this section is so general, and maybe it goes in another place, but both to address serving temperature as Johnny was describing, and like, you know, length of time between when it's prepared and when it's actually served.
Thanks, Meredith. Carrie?
Under the point N, hazard analysis critical control point plan, that is where it's a detailed, it's a whole, I have it printed as a binder, and it's like a 3-inch binder, and it breaks down every step. So like if we temp it and it's not hot enough, or it's not at whatever temperature, if it's not cold enough, if it's not hot enough, it's the proper steps to make sure it's at the proper temperature. It includes all the detailed instructions as to how long you can hold it and when to prepare the food. And so if they have the hazard analysis, it's called HACCP for short. So everybody should have a HACCP plan. And in that plan is when all that detailed information comes out on how long something should be held, at what temperature should be held. If it's something goes awry and it doesn't reach temperature or goes below temperature, let's say a warmer goes down and it's not serving time, that hazard analysis critical control point plan has everything in detail as to how they are going to address everything that can go wrong.
Thanks, Carrie. Johnny?
I know you, Meredith, you might have said 5 hours, but the regulation is 4. As soon as it's cooked, they have 4 hours to, you know, after that 4th hour, it got to go in the trash, unless you're going to be, you know, for some reason chilling it and having a blast chiller and you're going to save its life. But yeah, it should not be served. I hope that the youth are not getting food that old. But it's kind of hard here to really understand what the HACCP is if you don't know what it is, but it is extremely detailed, as mentioned. Anybody that sees this, they should automatically know that the do's and don'ts. And so it sounds like whatever was happening at that isolated agency possibly should not have happened. It's just it shouldn't be. It can happen once in a blue moon as a mistake and an accident, but if it's happening on a continuous basis, that I would think that environmental health need to be called out, to be honest. So yeah, that's it.
Thanks, Johnny. Okay, so as I'm understanding it, the written plans that are listed here should also capture some of our concerns about temperature, and it would ultimately come down to the facility level and whether or not they're complying by these stated lists. Okay. All right. Does anyone have any comments or recommendations for this section here before moving forward? No? Okay. All right, let's go ahead. Oh, actually, sorry, did we capture what was in that public comment section below? We needed to, okay. And we did talk about that briefly in the previous section when we talked about family meals and things. So, okay, great. So then moving on to 1465. And Amanda, were there any recommendations from Laura on this one?
No, it was only, the only other comments she had were in 1463, so no more in the remaining sections.
Okay, great. Just so I'm tracking with my eye as well.